all members of the public here this evening, so very warm welcome to our strategy group meeting. I apologise for starting slightly late. The previous presentation overran and I got here slightly late myself, so I offer my own apologies for that. I just want to say, starting off the meeting tonight, the formal meeting, can I sign off the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of November as correct record?
Great.
Apologies for absence, please.
Number C, Chairman.
Number C, thank you. Declarations of members' interests. Audio not declared on the interest form. Oh, my apologies, Councillor.
I noticed that we've got Reach for Health on the agenda this evening, so just it's not really an interest, but I'm not a totally detached party. I'm a member of Reach for Health. I use their facilities. I'm not a member of their management, and I don't go particularly with the management down at the local pub either.
What's interesting information?
But I am aware of the place and I use it.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. I'm sure that will be noted. Yes, Councillor Ritchie.
I should declare that my wife is a client.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Any other interests? Thank you. I suggest tonight, we've got a reasonably sizable agenda tonight. I want to take item 9.2 first, followed by item 7, followed by item 6.2. Order tonight. Okay, with your permission, committee. I think that's the right order. I think it should help us on the whole process. So if I can hand over to Councillor Morgan regarding the 2019-20 capital and revenue budget medium-term financial plan. Sorry to take you by surprise there, Councillor Morgan.
Chair, clarification 92, slide number 245, that's the second of my two.
Page 245, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Chair, as a rule, actually, I normally present my papers at the end of the agenda. And,
I thought tonight, it's important.
No, it's okay. No, I wanted to simply make a point. And as a rule, people don't always engage in the topic perhaps as much as they should do. And I think part of the reason for that is because historically, for many, many years, this district council has been very prudently run. And I think because of expertise from our officers and councillors, we've actually run a very tight ship. The fact of the matter is, I think we're still running a tight ship, but because of priorities we've set ourselves, with the essentially the pending abolition of the district council, we've committed to certain spending plans. Now, interesting enough, when you actually present these papers, of course, you actually present them historically about what's happened in the evening. And of course, the numbers as presented are how we project the meeting may run. So actually what we've got here is a whole set of numbers which are based on what might happen earlier in the evening, but of course we're here already. So that's number one. Number two, I'd also perhaps go through this a little bit more comprehensively, but I'm also conscious of the fact that many members of the public have had some time to wait. Of course, I'd like also to let the public know they actually did also have a very important presentation about domestic abuse beforehand. We weren't just sitting around pontificating, so apologise. So here we go. So this paper basically sets out our capital and revenue budget and medium-term financial plan, and it really sets the scene for the year ahead as well as giving you an update on where we are currently. And what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'll go through to quickly talk about the recommendations and then pick out a couple of the highlights in the report itself.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan.
So first of all, the recommendations are that the updated assumptions and proposals concerning the financial strategy and development of the 1920 budget preparation processes set out in section 4 of the report are approved. The second one is the revised budget projections incorporating the medium-term financial plan as set out in 10.5.1 and Appendix A of the report are approved, and that the public convenience costs be moved from special expenses to general fund with effect from the 1st of April 2019. And number 4, the draft proposals of the capital programme as detailed in section 6 and Appendix C of the report be approved. So that's what I'd like to recommend. I'll go through a little bit of detail, but also for members of the public, probably the most eye-catching, strangely enough, is the third one, which is about the public convenience costs being moved. And anybody that lives in Daventry town will actually be pleased probably to hear this, because it essentially moves £28,000 which would potentially for the coming year go to special expenses and shifts that expense across the whole district. rather than simply the townspeople and the taxpayers in the town. So it might sound like a strange one, but probably is good news for the people of Daventry town. So let's go on to a quick look at the overall page. So on 3.2, what we have there is the general fund revenue reserves projections. Nobody should be surprised by this table because you've seen it before. And that sets out the base position as was presented on previous meetings at the 26th of July Local Council, and then updates that with new financial information. So that's where that sets the scene. And then basically, in order to create the updated table, which appears a few pages later, we then apply various movements. And on page 247, the one I'd like to point out there actually relates to new business rate retention pilots. At the last meeting, I updated the strategy group and then subsequent council that we've submitted an application for that. The result of that is, unfortunately, we haven't yet heard, but we do believe we'll hear on that on the week commencing the 6th of December. I'm going to move on quickly to the next page where I'd like to point out one very interesting feature which is related to green waste. And again, it's interesting having so many members of the public here because, of course, when the new waste contract started earlier in the year, some concerns about frequency of waste collection, all those kind of things. And what we did was we projected the number of households who would adopt the waste, the brown bin. And in our projections, we projected at 16,500, but actually we've had 20,000 circa adoptions of the brown bin. So interesting number, that one, and I think by many accounts the new waste contract has been a success, and actually the reception of things like the blue lily bins, etc., has been very well received. So that's one of the points there. Obviously there's lots of detail, and we're galloping a little bit through so we get to the kind of highlights. If we then look at revenue growth bid section on page 249, there's obviously this is a section which details where we're basically asking for more money, and the one I'd most like to highlight there is the bottom of page 249, which relates to new bids for housing temporary accommodation, where we're actually seeking £150,000 more needed to support those in housing temporary accommodation. And of course, I think that also has its own links to previous agenda items as well. We've also got then community grants discussed, and as we've seen, there's been a whole raft of community grants issued, and I think in many respects the council is approaching, particularly on this agenda, a period of great level of disbursement in our funds. Other features on there, for instance, we talk about on page 251, which is the review of special expenses, which I've already mentioned, which will be welcome news to people, particularly in the town. Before we then actually work our way through to page 252, which is the updated medium-term financial plan. And there's a particular row here I'd like to point out for members, which I think is significant. And that is on the budget deficit stroke surplus for the year line. You can see that in this year and next year we actually have brackets, which means we have a surplus. But as we move through to the projections towards 2023-24, there actually becomes a budget deficit in this area. And actually some members and even public observe may say the district council won't observe then, that won't exist then, will be an observation they've made. The very fact of the matter is, whilst the district council may not exist then, the people of Daventry district will still have to pay council tax bills, and so we still have to be prudent. So we actually see there that regardless of what the future may be, we still have to plan for it, and the budget deficit starts to increase and leads to a position where actually, were we here, we may well have to cut budgets ourselves to actually make sure we can fund our services as well as our ambitions. Now, when you move then through to page 253 of the report, you actually find in section 5.5 that this is obviously taking into account spending that we may or may not commit this evening, as is written in the agenda. you actually find that by the end of the current cycle which we're planning, we actually have a capital funding deficit of 1.195 million. Now I think certainly in the relatively short time that I've held this portfolio, I've never had to present that situation before. And of course, I think historically we've always, at least in recent memory, we've always had a very robust situation. And I think the message here is that members shouldn't necessarily think that we have, to use a Harry Enfield sketch, loads of money, and we have to be still prudent. The impact of that basically is on our current capital projections, that would mean we're actually taking ourselves into a borrowing position, which I've certainly not observed in my time here as a councillor. Let's just have a talk about some of the items that we've committed to. Obviously we see earlier in the agenda, or later in the agenda as it now is, we actually have a situation whereby we're seeking potentially significantly more for the cinema. And also, particularly, members will know that the commitments we made this year was to make sure that development went ahead. We also pledged a priority for the retail stroke leisure development as well, and also hopefully to get another school in the town as well. So all these things are costing quite a bit of money. We've got a more comprehensive conversation coming up about the cinema development, and the current projection is, albeit conservative or prudent or sensible, may cost 1.3 million, but it is widely desired by most people across the district who we've spoken to, and has wide support. There are also other capital programme items in here as well, which we're seeking. And let me point out a couple of those. So we've got, for instance, the refurbishment of Daventry Country Park. We've got Borough Hill car park works. We've got Daventry Country Park cafe refurbishments. All of these don't come really cheaply if they're done well. People across the district, in particular those that use the town facilities, often regard the country park as the jewel in the crown, and all of these things require additional funding. We then move through several pages of areas where we're looking to provide funding, either directly or through SIL money, and that gets us then essentially skipping a couple of pages, if you like, for brevity, to a point on page 7.2 where we actually represent the capital programme, and the keynote members will actually see, let me take you through the line here, which is the projected capital reserves line. We actually moved from a position in 2018-19 of 12.7 million, which then decreases rapidly to 5.268 million, and this is really an impact of us actually having our expenditure programme. And of course, let's not forget, all of this is going to take a lot of stress for the officers, as well, in a time where actually there'll be stresses upon us as we're looking to a new unitary authority as well, not least with other backdrops of uncertainty, such as, quite frankly, Brexit. Who knows what the hell's going on while we're in this meeting. Furthermore, you then look into 2021, and you actually end up in a position where we have a 0.059 millions deficit in the capital spending programme, and as you move through the next couple of years, ends up in a 1.195 million situation. In short, basically, we have committed, depending on this, how this meeting flows, £34 million of spending, and whilst in one of our views has been to make sure the people of Daventry receive the benefit of our prudence over the last couple of years. We still need to be very careful, and I think the stark option may well be, if we continue spending over and above what we have here, the district council will have to go into a borrowing position to fund the programme, and we'll have to make a judgment on whether that's something we'd like to do or not. So those are recommendations, Chair, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Morgan. I'll go back in a second. Okay. Just a question I want to ask, actually, if I could, the officers on the annual refurbishment, which includes the library room. How much of that cost is actually the library room? Because it's the refurbishment of the whole building's understanding. How much is the actual library cost and move going to cost?
I'm afraid, Chairman, we don't have a specific breakdown because the specification includes the whole works. It becomes very, very difficult to do a meaningful split.
Okay.
Several £100,000 is certainly beyond that.
can't tell. Okay, that's very helpful. Sorry, Councillor...
Bradley.
No, sorry. Sorry. Mine's gone. It's been a long day. You can sit down actually, because you have to stand for the strength.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise yet again, it's another sort of question of clarification from myself being a relatively new member.
That's okay, that's fine.
Obviously to do, you brought up the cinema spending in there, and I understand that's projected, so regardless of the outcome of the debate later, I can't see that having an impact. My question relates to we'll be discussing Reach for Health,
We will be, yeah.
which obviously options 2 and 3 are quite significant spending. If this gets approved now, will that have an impact on how we are able to vote later on during the Reach for Health?
Not as far as I'm concerned, I always want to take it first. The point
I
is,
think that's why we wanted to take it.
that's the point. It's a good point, Councillor Ramsey. The point is, this is to set the scene.
Yeah.
So members understand where we are financially, members of the public understand where we are financially now, but it doesn't affect any outcome moving forward on the other agenda items tonight. So whatever we do next will not be affected by this coming first. So if, for instance, we change something, which is in this paper, later on in one of the other items, that will then transfer into this motion, do you think?
The impacts will need to
Flow out, yes.
Okay.
So it won't change any decision, this won't change, this is just setting the scene really.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
I wonder if Councillor Morgan can give us just very, very briefly an overview of what has happened over the past year. At this time last year, you were planning to spend £16 million on a bit of canal. What has happened to all the money?
Want to answer that now, Councillor Morgan? Or?
Chair, I think, the numbers are in there anyway, and I think we have to look at the situation as it currently stands. And I think I would like to go back, so that's the question as it is. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. And I don't know, I mean, the numbers are, I think the numbers are pretty straightforward in one respect, in terms of they're all there and they're transparent, and we've seen them on many occasions. But actually, I think I'd like to go back to Councillor Ramsey's point, which actually is the point of the matter is really, in terms of presenting this, was simply saying that with the numbers the way they look, based on the agenda as it is, that's how you get that deficit by the end of the cycle. That doesn't mean to say members have to accept it as it is. You can accept this as it is, and then you can actually say, well, actually, we're so likely to accept any option for Reach for Health, and then that'll be built in due course, and we'll have to make decisions about how to plan for it. But these are the numbers as it is, and this order would like to make any further comments.
Just on that point, Audrey, just about the canal.
Yeah, through you, Chair. There's two significant things that happened during last year. Obviously, we took the canal out of the expenditure, but we also took the assumed income out from the sale of the T-Decal homes. So, whilst there was a large expenditure item removed, there was also a large income item removed. And since then, of course, we've introduced the cinema costs.
Thank you, Audrey. I just want to say for the members of the public tonight, it's always very confusing in these council meetings. The strategy group is sort of the senior members plus all members come to this meeting they wish to. We've made recommendations tonight. So whether we decide tonight's a recommendation which goes to our full council meeting beginning in December, and the full council meeting is where you actually make the final decision. So the idea of this meeting tonight is to have a discussion on items, and we come to a conclusion on recommendations, which could again change by the time we get to the council meeting at the beginning of December. Just want the members of the vote to understand that, because it can be quite confusing. You're sitting there and not quite sure when a decision is taken tonight. It won't be a final one unless it's a response to the consultation potentially. It won't be a final one until we get to the council meeting in December. So Councillor Gilbert.
I've read all the papers in context with each other this evening because I thought you had to do that in reality. But just a few points, because Councillor Morgan has presented an alarmist case, which, you know, is his duty that, you know, we could be in a deficit position. My observations are that we've always been very prudent here. So, for example, in 4.2, we only take 50%. So this is not an actual position, this is a projected, prudent position. So that is one thing to bear in mind. The other thing I note in 5.1, Councillor Morgan mentioned about cuts to services, again an anonymous comment, but before you get to 3 years' time, you can take corrective action, you can do investor save schemes, you can do other things. So again, this is a prudent approach, and things could be done to change the current position. I admire the Section 151 officer, but it's a crystal ball situation in that we're trying to project on a prudent basis.
This is the normal way we do it.
Yeah, the other point I'd like to mention is that we seem to be risk averse to borrowing. Businesses borrow all the while. And that's my personal opinion, but I have seen neighbouring authorities accept to deliver additional facilities. Yes, they've ended up in debt. I don't want to end up in debt. But you can facilitate projects with borrowing. And then my last point is, as I say, this is a projection, not an actual position, and corrective actions can be taken in the timescale we've got before we go to a deficit position.
Thank you, Joe. Do you want to come back to the borrowing aspect? That's just very problem come back at the moment.
Just to say, very simply, Councillor Guildford obviously held this role previously, so she knows how we operate. And I think what's often made us distinctive from other local authorities, perhaps across the county, and of course with the whole collapse of the county council, is our prudence. And of course, whilst there is conservatism in there, there's also the risk of a lot of uncertainty in the future. And we only have to observe national political events today to see that.
Thank you, Councillor. Or would you like to just respond on the borrowing that Councillor Gordon mentioned?
Yeah, certainly through the chair. We are not averse to borrowing. And as in line with the Prudential Code, we would look at borrowing on the merits of the schemes. But like any borrowing, it must be affordable. And when you're projecting deficits to the amount that we are, and one of the points I'd just like to pick up is those deficits that are projected now, and we've always taken a prudent approach, and some of those relate largely to the business rates, and certainly the number of appeals come through. And had we not have been in an economic environment where we see the lights in the county and the adult and children's social services, whereas before I thought the projections for business rates were prudent, and that when we come to the reset in 2020, that all the growth that we enjoy now, I've taken out, I am even more certain that that's not just a prudent position. I believe it to be more and more accurate as children and adult services take the headlines and how much we will get as a share of business rates. In addition, not only have we committed all of our capital, but the rolling programme in there represents disabled facilities grants. And that's a statutory function and really relates to most of the £1 million of the rolling programme, coupled with the home repair assistance that members are very keen on. All of that will fall to the revenue account. So 4.2 million will look more like 5.2 million. And whilst I appreciate we have reserves to action, and that's why we've always looked at that, as a 151 officer, I have to do a Section 25 report that mentions the adequacy and robustness of reserves. £5 million is practically half of our net budget. We will most certainly have to look at levels of services if we were to, whether we remain as the district or whether we go into the unitary. Those services will have to be delivered, and there will be some tough decisions.
Thank you, Audrey. Councillor Audrey.
Yeah, it's just that Councillor Morgan just put sort of baby stepped me through this. So 1819 on your capital expenditure, which is page 262. So 12.7 million, 1819, that capital reserves. Was that at the beginning of the financial year, or is that where we end up at the end of the financial year?
This My understanding is this would be where we'd end up at the end of the
Projected
program,
figure.
because that's what carries across for the
So we
next year.
take 12 million into 1920. So in 1920, we spend 7 million and we take 5.2 million into 2021. And in 2021, if we are here, we will then take a £59,000 deficit into how that works.
That's
Okay.
good, that's good.
Now, am I right in saying that capital, and I'm learning, because I've been taught some of this, and I might have been learning wrong, that we can supplement capital reserves with revenue reserves if there was a revenue excess? Could we put monies over into, is that how things could work? Can we use revenue for capital?
I think just get clarification on one by one.
We can certainly make revenue contributions to capital.
Okay.
Again, we would look at the whole picture in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
affordability as to whether it is
Yeah.
better for the authority to borrow,
Yeah.
in which case you can take an amount to cover those costs
Yeah.
through the revenue account, rather than use all of your reserves, which then you need the money to do exactly as Councillor Wilson says, with the plan and everything else. So there's a fine balance between those costs. Just because you have revenue, in terms of planning for those deficits, you'd have to look very carefully as to how you want to use those, as opposed to borrowing. So you'd have to look at it in the round.
And I make the same point as Councillor Morgan. I use that, this is not the sale of the century. We are not, we are desperately trying to use our revenues that we have to benefit the residents of Daventry District on some much needed funding in some areas. So we certainly don't want to bankrupt the situation. We don't want to lose all the good reputation we've had in our finances. We just want to find a way where we can finance as many good causes, as many important causes as we can, so the residents of Daventry District Council benefit from our prudent finances over many years. So I don't think anyone here is out to bankrupt us. What we're trying to do is find what can we do the most for the people. So it's interesting to have this sort of overview as we then go into other matters. So thank you.
That's Councillor Wilson. I think it's very important for people to realise that the unitary authority, if it is formed in 2020, because at the moment no formal decision has been taken, the Daventry District will be swallowed in with Northampton Borough, which is the main party to that unitary, and also South Northants. And I think that's why members of this council feel very strongly that we always acted properly, we always acted prudently, and that's why we managed our affairs very well over 20 years. That we want to continue doing that, but at the same time maximise the value to our residents. Because in my personal opinion, it's a personal opinion, that value will not be the same when we're in the unitary, because obviously we'll be a small partner, one of the smaller, well, one of 3 partners, but we are far smaller than the borough, and so on, that's South Northants. And therefore, and on the numbers of councillors, which is still to be determined, by the way, you will not have the majority of councillors representing this area. And that's why, at the moment, whilst we're still here, as long as we do it properly and prudently, with all due diligence, that's why members are very keen to spend the money in our district area while we can, not recognising that when we go to the unitary, because we'll be inheriting, say in the borough's case, the debts, what have you, which we're inheriting, the new unitary will inherit that. But obviously, our good prudence over the years, members want to make sure that our residents get that reward as well. It's not just goes into the big pot, even though we are part of the bigger picture. Councillor Osborne.
What worries me, Chairman, is when we do, if we do go to a unitary, which answers some of the things that happened yesterday, I don't know, well, if we do go to a unitary, the debts that the county council have, unless it does some agreement with the government to get rid of some of them, and I can't see it happening. I mean, I'm aware, for instance, that the county has took out £8.5 million of its 106 money. It's spent them, which is revenue money, it's spent them on other sources. So it owes £8.5 million just to its 106 money. That's just a tiny amount.
Yeah.
Now, if you think of it mathematically, half of that debt, in effect, will come to this unitary, along with half of all the other debts that the county cannot resolve with government or resolve itself. Although it seems good to spend every bit of money we can and
in the right way.
I don't knock the council for that because it happened before at the previous reorganisation. We must think what will happen to the people that are going to be paying for the new unitary. With Northampton Borough, like you said, added to us, and their debts and problems, and with the county and their debts and problems, they're going to be paying an awful lot of, or people that live in their district are going to be paying an awful lot of tax in effect. And to have some still in the pot, I think, is very prudent, and not to let the tap run completely dry and empty the sink completely before we get there. Because it's going to be a difficult position, Chairman.
This is going to be a difficult position, Councillor Osborne. You're quite right about that. And of course, the county council's done the split between north and west unitaries. There's 2 unitaries there.
Yeah.
But we know for a fact there's going to be difficult times ahead. But I'm thinking the point about we're making here about our residents in our district is that because we have a low council tax level, a member under the council tax equalisation, we'd like to have a bigger increase over time to catch up. Because that's how it works in these things. I just think it's important that we represent our residents in the right way while we can as an independent sovereign body. And when we're part of the unitary, representing that unitary when it's formed in 2020, if it is formed in 2020, because as you say, you never know what's going to happen in politics at the moment, that the reality is that we have to have a strong voice representing this district even at that point. So I think the point you're making is a fair point.
Can I just come back to a couple of words? But the point I'm making, Chairman, that if we go into it with no money, is that responsible? Is that responsible?
We're not saying that, are we?
Okay, we've spent it on our people before the pool gets a lot bigger, but it's probably not a responsible thing to do, knowing the debts that are coming.
Okay, but the debts that are coming are far, far, far bigger than any contribution we make, so I just want to say that as well. Because that's important. If we could clear all the debts, that might be a different ballgame. But I'm not knocking it, Steve, I'm just saying it's different viewpoints.
Yeah,
true. Thank you for that. Councillor Guildford.
Okay, if I can just come back on the prudent budget, in that I agree, Councillor Osborne, we need to think to the future as well, and we need to see some monies flowing into the unitary. What worries me the most is the way we have a practice of being prudent, which means that at the end of the year we could have more than we expected, and then we've turned down monies that could have been spent in the district on the fact that we're being very prudent. Also that, for example, we mentioned earlier, and thank you Councillor Morgan, being portfolio holder for the environment, we had a terrific uptake to the green bins, and we've added that money in. Then Norse, under different management now, we could generate more income through our trade waste, which we hope to do. But, as I say, I bring you back to my first point, I'd hate to think that we're not spending money because we're so prudent, and there is more money there than...
Okay, Councillor Guildford, that's...
If I get my point across.
I get your point, I just want to come to that order.
I do. Certainly in terms of prudence, which has stood us in very good stead in previous years, but in particular about the outturn, and I've been in this chamber many years presenting an underspend in excess of £1 million. But what we can also say is that those budgets have been robustly challenged. And if you have a look at the report currently, we're actually projecting 141,000 underspend, which, given the size of the budget and the contingencies that you would build in there, that's not unexpected and shows good management of the budget. But also, it's a snapshot in time. And when this report was written, for instance, since then, what will be coming, as this is a series of budget reports. So, for instance, in my email today, with regards to the joint core strategy that's going to be required, that's another £450,000 that will be required. Local government reorganisation. And I appreciate that some of these figures are eye-watering, but when we put the bid into central government, each of the 8 authorities agreed to put £500,000 in, so that there was a £4 million budget. That 1.4 million budget is already looking more like a 6 million budget. So that's another £250,000, for which I'm not saying these are exact figures, but they're the ones that are being sort of talked about at the moment. As part of the transitional costs to get to the unitary. Some of those transitional costs will occur whilst we are a sovereign body DDC. Now, when the bid was put in, those costs were looking around 12 million. Early indications are now that they're in excess of 20 million. So when we talk about planning for those services and those costs, there's going to be a considerable pool. And in terms of those earmark reserves that we had in years gone by, and you can take the canal as an example, we had an earmark reserve for schemes that didn't go ahead because 1.4 million went back there. So it's prudent management, but a lot of these things are coming to fruition, and there will be extra calls on our budgets without a doubt.
Thank you, Audrey. I did raise the issue of the Chief Executive about the increased costs in terms of the local government organisation. I want to reassure us that those additional costs have been scrutinised very carefully. I've been reassured by you, Chief Executive, that they are being scrutinised very carefully. Councillor Organ.
Yeah, it's just, I don't want there to be a misconception out there that the projects being funded here would not be the responsibility of the new unitary anyway, because many of them are. Many of them will actually for the land of the new unitary. And I think what worries me in essence is that as we go into unitary, if that happens, those projects, those things that we're trying to fund will still be there, but they're going to be on a list of lots of others then. And what may well happen is that the greatest need may well be in the borough, because that's the greater amount of people live there, the greater need in there. And I feel that there is a danger that the district could suffer with some of our projects being put lower down the list and not fulfilled because simply priority goes somewhere else. You know, this is a great opportunity for us to realise that, and actually, whilst we can, to prioritise our own district. Because this is money that's going to be spent anyway for the public good by the unitary on these projects. So if we have an opportunity to do the best way we can through due diligence, through prudence and through all those other things, to do the best we can to fund these projects. And if we can do that, then I'm sure that our residents will go to the unitary better equipped and more optimistic for the future.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. In some respects, actually, Chair, I'd urge you to wrap this up in a minute, because actually this is only the scene setting.
I know that, yeah.
And actually, yeah, of course, but in many respects we'll have more debates later about the numbers.
I realise that. You got anything to add then, Chairman?
I have actually, Chair. Well, yes, I have, and that is really sort of, I think, it's about time lags, really. Because you plant seeds now and things take place years later. I mean, a great example will be the foresight we had to support Maybe Road, of course, which opened today. And as we've seen, you can make decisions now which manifest themselves in 7 years. And I think I was really listening to Councillor Osborne. It's a bit like the analogy. You see, well, we're bleeding, we've lost an arm anyway, so we'll just stab you while we're at it. It doesn't really matter. You're bleeding in several places. In actual fact, what's already been asked by this plan is that the council accepts a 1.195 million deficit by 23-24, regardless of the existential situation of whether we're here or not. So even with prudent situation, that's still not a good position to find ourselves in. And yes, actions between now and then to reduce that impact are always going to be welcome. But I think ultimately, we only reward our residents if we do things responsibly and don't add to the debt pile they're going to inherit already. And I certainly, as the resources portfolio order, I'm already not entirely comfortable about presenting it with 1.195 million, even though some might think in the grand scheme of things it's actually quite small. So I hope that sets the scene for the evening's debate. And
sets the scene for this recommendation.
Absolutely, it sets the scene for this recommendation. Well, and actually, Chair, not only sets the scene for this recommendation, but all the updates as we go towards the...
I also like to add, it's over my years of experience, we often have been in the position before of projecting a deficit maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, which never happens when you get there. A lot of things happen between now and then, and that's the point of saying, a lot of other factors will play in, and then you find you don't actually get to that 5-year projection because a lot of things have changed. So I'm always getting worried about 5-year projections, I think 2-3 years when you place.
Chairman, she's probably in a good position to find herself in not actually having a deficit after all.
No, thank you.
Rather than where.
Okay, committee, can we agree the 4 recommendations as shown? Agreed?
Agreed.
Anyone against? That's carried, thank you. We now move on to item number 7, which is Councillor James. Development of Town Centre Division 1, Site 1, Mulberry Place. Page 113.
Thank you, Chairman. Members may remember that in May this year, when the news broke that we were going to be moving possibly to a unit association, that we agreed to prioritise expenditure on our project. And the project that was identified as being that would be very popular to residents of the district was the construction of a cinema in the town, because we haven't had a cinema for some time. And I'm one of those that can remember when we had 2 cinemas in this town.
On the screen for you, David.
Oh, I see. Yes, I never knew so. But anyway, we decided then to go ahead with the cinema. It's a little bit of a fly by the seat of the pants operation because we need to get at a very early date a contract signed to go ahead with the construction in case, of course, we are stalled by moves towards the unitary authority and any bars put on expenditure. So we've had to do things in a way which one wouldn't normally contemplate. Initially, we estimated the cost of creating the cinema would be about £8.2 million. And that was a ballpark figure that came from within, without the advice of external advisors, quantity surveyors and so on. So that sum of money was set aside in the budget. The library, the demolition of the old ground school building, or what is now the current library, would mean move the library to the Abbey Centre, which of course would require refurbishment in order to make it suitable for use. Since May this year, we've made quite substantial progress, in spite of the fact that this is a very, very highly pressured exercise involving a lot of people. We have appointed Wilmot Dixon from the Scape National Framework as a design and building contractor, and appointed in turn MCA as the architect. Since then, commercial leisure advisors and quantity surveyors have been appointed to oversee the procurement process. The process of selecting a cinema operator has commenced, and we've had quite a response. I believe that we've had about approaches from about 10 operators, 10 or 11 operators, of which about half a dozen are probably being seriously considered. Now, some of those may have different requirements. So once again, once we move to construction, it may well be that we have to tweak things and alter things to suit a particular cinema operator's requirements. That might be an extra screen, or it might be a restaurant within the cinema. So we are really doing this as she goes. Anyway, the purpose, really, main purpose of tonight's paper is the fact that the budget for the cinema, the Mulberry Place development, which now is to incorporate a square. The cinema will be set back, and there will be a properly surfaced square there, which can be used for all sorts of events, and which will be of a standard that complements the conservation area in which it is situated, that's going to cost quite a bit, and a lot more than what we thought. So I'm now asking for the budget to be revised to 12.3 million. At the same time, the Abbey, refurbishment of the Abbey to incorporate the library, including moving the library down there, the budget for that needs to be revised to 1.5 million. Initially we thought it was going to be a lot more than that because Wilmot Dixon was estimated based on a much higher specification, including refurbishment of all the upper floors as well. But about 1.5, we reckon, 1.5 million is about the right figure. So we need to provide extra resources. Our timetable for delivering this project is going to be something of this order. If we can get on with this straight away, we could commence on work on the library in December this year. As far as we are aware, we do not need planning permission for converting the Abbey into a library. This was the difference between its current use and the library use. We do not think that that will be necessary. So we could start on the library refurbishment in December of this year, and if all goes well, we could complete it in April and relocate the library in May next year, 2019. The Mulberry Place development, the square, the cinema, the restaurants, etc., that we would need planning permission for. And I'm pleased to say that tomorrow a planning application is being submitted for that particular scheme. If all goes well, we could get planning permission by February next year, February 2019, and implement a construction contract by March 2019. And I would suggest that we adhere very strictly to this timetable to get this construction contract signed as soon as possible. So we estimate that that might be in March 2019 at the latest. Work would then start, say, in about July 2019, and the opening of the cinema would be in August 2020. So that's the provisional timetable, and we need to really get a move on it. And it's not easy for us because our resources are somewhat limited at the moment. Our capacity to actually carry out all these projects that we have is limited by staff vacancies itself. Nevertheless, try as we must. Right. Let me have another look, see what else we need to cover.
You've covered most of them, David. You've got 7 recommendations, but asking to read them all out.
Right.
So we have a discussion and debate from members.
Okay. Do you want me to precede the recommendations? Or?
Well, members have got them in front of them, I hope. All members got them in front of them.
You've got it there.
Yeah.
So we'll take questions.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, Councillor James, okay. Well, I'll let Councillor Dash first, then Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the cinema. I think it's, I've not been in Daventry as long as Councillor James, but we definitely need some sort of input into the town centre to improve matters, make the place attractive without having the canal. I think having the cinema is a little bit more obvious. A couple of questions I've got. The consultation that was held recently, are there any details of what residents, how they responded, how many responded, and whether there's any interesting developments from that, as in they loved it, hated it, or made some tremendous recommendations, I don't know. But also I'm very concerned about the cost increase. I did read the papers, and apart from a little suggestion that the ground conditions were a bit more difficult than expected, and what Councillor James said about it, it was a ballpark figure, but we're talking a 50% increase. and therefore there must have been some thought going behind the original estimate. You know, there must be surely an itemised list. You don't just come out with 8-point-something million. You must have, you know, various things: groundwork, construction, consultancy, and so on. So it'd be interesting to see what was it, what does it look like now, and where have we been hit that 50% increase.
That's a fair question.
First of all, it was a ballpark figure that was done internally. You would need quantity surveyors and a definite scheme in order to provide a more detailed and precise figure. You'd have to have the actual scheme in front of you. Since the project started, of course, we've now incorporated, set the library further back, and incorporated the square, which is costly, very costly. But the real reason, of course, is the ground conditions and the fact that the infrastructure is very, very poor, very poor. In fact, the electricity cables, the main electricity cables and the drains are really inadequate for the existing use there. Now, I believe I'm right in saying, I don't know whether it's the drain or it's the electricity cable alone. We're talking about a figure of about £250,000 for that alone. And that is really the problem and why the costs have escalated so much. So it's the enhancement of the cinema with the square, and they'll have to be landscaped, and of course there'll be features, probably water feature, I don't know. But also this infrastructure problem.
Maybe Councillor James, you've got to add anything to that time?
Just in terms of Councillor Camp's first question about consultation, the details will be published. There is a consultation report as part of the planning application, so that will be submitted tomorrow morning. Once it's validated, we'll appear on the council's website, so all the details will be there then. But in summary, we had pretty good engagement both with the public and with terms of the businesses and stakeholder groups, and the overwhelming response was strongly positive. We have businesses who are looking to do things which ally to having the cinema there, in addition to our scheme. We have, as you might expect, good public support. So generally, a welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I refer to page 117 at the bottom where it says there is some possibility a library relocation would require planning permission. I'm sure members of the public are here tonight might be perplexed by this one, particularly as we are the planning authority and it looks like we're not entirely sure if we do or don't. So maybe if we could perhaps flesh that out and give us some clarity of why that would be, because reading that gives you some risk in the project, which I'd like to take some reassurances of. The second one, linked to the library, is what, and I don't think the paper really calls this out, what is the risk that will go to this expense to move the library, only then to have the county council decide that it's on the closure list? That seems pretty perverse if it did, but it could happen, I guess. And the next question, finally, is around about the costs. So members in the public have seen me present tonight the risk in the budget, and of course, as portfolio concerns me. Given the statement a moment ago from Councillor James, is there a risk that that cost could go even higher and therefore even have a greater impact on our potential deficit situation? And therefore, what provision should we be making for a higher number than even what we've got to do?
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Do you want to just answer that point to something?
Well, first of all,
Councillor James, go on.
yeah, on the question of planning permission, we would only be talking about the change of use. And I think change of use from an office to a library is the risk of that being turned down is so smooth that it's not worth considering.
Okay, thank you.
If indeed one has to.
I thought it said earlier, actually, I thought it made earlier.
Yeah.
There's no planning permission.
But Chair, in the paper it says we might
I
have.
know, it might have to.
Chairman, forgive me, but just the reason it says there's a risk is that there is still a planning judgment to be made here, which officers will make. You can qualify information either for operations, which doesn't apply here, the works themselves are fine, because they're internal, they're very minor, and for a material change of use. Now, I think our argument, I know our argument, is that it's not a material change of use, the impact of the outside world is almost imperceptible. But there is technically a change of use going on, but it's probably not material. So it's that question of materiality that gives rise to the question. But as has been said, as a portfolio holder, we are confident that in the event that the Commission is required, it will be forthcoming because we're willing to pay.
Thank you, Simon. Any more news, David?
Well, on the question of libraries being closed, I believe the county is currently considering closing 4 libraries. Now, I know that at least half a dozen libraries that could be closed, and I would think we would probably be the last one, or one of the last ones to be closed by the county council, if they were legally able to do so. And it will end up, as we're going into a unitary authority, it will end up in our hands anyway.
Thank you, Councillor James. I've just got to that in.
If I could just pad that out slightly, I'm in contact with the Chief Executive of the County Council. In fact, we had a conversation on Monday this week about the libraries in this district and what was being proposed, that's a strong word, but some of the thoughts that she was having on them. If you recall, Daventry Library was never under threat. It's not under threat now. In fact, the county library service is actually looking forward to having a brand new, in effect, library to operate from in Daventry, far more accessible than the current library.
Thank you. Okay, Colin?
Yeah, so Chair, I was going to say, so actually by moving it to that location, it can actually further reinforce the positive benefits of the library, and it is worth having the expenditure.
Thank you, Councillor Guildford.
Okay, I support this report and take you to page 117 where it says, overall, given the wider benefits of the scheme, it is considered that these justify the likely costs of the scheme. One, we're all sitting here because we've been elected by our public residents. We've heard earlier how we've been out to consultation, and this is what our residents would like to see. I know myself as I go around the district and town, they are all talking about the cinema. We also made this a priority project of this council to deliver. We've talked about prudency earlier. Well, we're prudent in our budgets, and I presume we're prudent everywhere else in here, so we would hopefully not expect to go over. You can't say, yes, we're prudent on one paper and we're not prudent on another. The risks, I think, are small, as you say, for the libraries. And this is, win-win. You're getting the cinema, you're getting eateries, you're getting a library that is going to be modernised that we would never get under the...
And a high quality public space.
And a high quality public space. If I go to the risks, one, work being done on the assumption that no major obstacles arise, that is the risk for any project, no matter what you do. We've already talked about the library and that being a low risk. In relation to securing the cinema operators, well, I thought I heard Councillor James say earlier that we've had lots of people approach us that want to deliver this, and so that's a low risk. And the trend is people want to continue to eat out. So I think it's a low risk, I think it's a win-win for the community, and therefore I would support it.
Thanks, Councillor Guildford. Councillor Organ.
Yeah, a lot's been covered, to be fair, Chair, about the projected costs, and the reality in these developments is that you could find something like a World War II bomb. I'm not saying there's one there.
No, certainly don't.
No, I'm not sure that we ever got bombed in this area, but I do understand that. And I think that my assumption is that there is prudence with regard to the costings to take into account some slippage to the costing a little bit more, and I'd like some reassurance from that, just that assumption. And off the last one is to, and I'm again reading the papers, that these costings have all been inputted on page 262 with regard to the longevity. So it's all been, if this is approved, it's already in those figures. So we haven't looked at it. Okay, that's great. So it's just about the reassurance about Councillor Guildford's point about whether it's already been prudent with regard to costing in the future.
Chairman, the costs are prepared by Wilmot Dixon in its capacity as design and build contractor. They are designed to be high-end costs. I cannot absolutely guarantee it's possible to go higher, but I consider it to be highly unlikely.
Okay, sir. Thank you, Councillor. We'll get Councillor Richard.
Thanks for allowing me to contribute, Chair. Firstly to say, I'm a little disappointed that we don't have the results of the consultation, because it was a couple of weeks since the deadline for submissions. I'm also sad that we don't have the consultation that I understand that the county did on the relocation of the library. However, having said that, I wouldn't expect that the results of the consultation on the cinema would be things that greatly surprised me. Last year, some of us ran the Daventry Future project, and the case for a cinema got very strong support. Not unanimous support, but very, very strong support. They thought that this is something that Daventry needed in the centre to make it into much more of a place that people would want to visit and therefore do their shopping and spend their money. I have therefore long supported the idea of having a cinema. Where I have a slight problem, my position on this, I don't have a vote tonight, but I will have to use a vote when it comes to the council meeting. My problem with this is that if we were in normal circumstances, I would want to reject this as being a cinema that was the wrong size, the wrong cost, and in the wrong place. I appreciate, however, that we are now in a situation where we only have a short period of time in which to take a decision if we as a council are going to deliver in this. There's not a hope in hell that the new unitary is going to deliver a cinema for Daventry, at least for decades to come. I think that in that situation, I wonder if an officer can tell us, or you yourself, at what stage do we need to reach and when, so that there is actually a contract that we can argue that a commitment has been made and we go ahead. If I can just explain, what I would like to see, I would love to see a little bit extra time to be able to think, look, do we actually need a cinema that costs 12 million? What do we get for 8 million? And so on. And it's whether we have got the space to rethink and say, and is that actually the right place? Is there not space? We haven't accepted clients to fill the hotel and the residential, the retirement home that is planned for the old swimming pool site. Would that not be a better site where you already have a car park and everything? I just feel that these are debates that we ought to be having or ought to have had, and it seems that at this stage, I fear that we will be put into a position and saying that, look, a little like Theresa May today, if you want it, this is your only option.
Well, I think it's not quite like that. I think the reality now, not about the ideal situation. The reality is, you're talking about getting to the point of no return, basically. Because we get to a point before it's all taken away from us, where actually we haven't taken a firm decision and the contract's not in place. The next body could actually discard it. So I think the point is, for the people of this district, we know it's a very popular scheme, we know people want the cinema in Daventry. I think it's very, very important we move as quickly as we can to secure that on go past the point of no return, where it's too late to change it. So if you're down the line and then the next council decides they want to change it, it's going to cost an awful lot of money to actually get nowhere. I think that's what I'm saying. So I think it's very important to get to that stage. You can consult as many times as you want, Ken, and you get lots of different views, I get that. But the point about this is getting something delivered in a timely manner, which doesn't put at risk our money in terms of our agenda here to try and deliver something good for the people in this area.
My point is that if we got to the stage where we could actually have a contract with a contractor saying that we commission you to build a cinema.
That's what we're making.
In the next few months, we will tell you what size of cinema and where we would like it built. Would that suffice?
First of all, I'll be blunt about the timing. I have taken this project under my wing personally because it is on such a tight timetable that delivering what we can in the time that we've got, we don't have any slack in this programme at all. If members tonight had said, actually we don't think we like 3 screens or 4 screens or 9 screens, go back and redesign it, we would not get to point of contract before this council effectively will be looking to other authorities, i.e. the shadow, to make a decision for us. And I think I'm pretty certain what that decision would be on that basis. I think in terms of could we get to a point of contract, sign a contract and then negotiate a different scheme afterwards? The answer to that is absolutely no. We are spending a lot of money already getting ourselves to a point where this can be signed and delivered by a contractor, by a contractor. There is no way that we would incur huge costs if we take this process to that point and then go back and say, actually no, I think we want to change this. So again, we'd be going through a planning system again, and all the time we haven't signed a contract, this project is at risk. So my aim, and I've been pushing Wilmot Dixon hard, as no doubt Simon will confirm, to actually get to the point where we have a figure tonight for you to consider, because if we don't consider it tonight and we don't approve it on the 6th of December, I can't guarantee to this committee that we can actually deliver this.
Thank you. Councillor Hills.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I went to 2 of the consultation meetings. I won't say that they were tremendously well attended, but those who were there, some from the public and some from the business people, were all very, very keen to see it progress and fully supported it. This is something we talk about leaving a legacy for the residents of Daventry. This is something that, to me, is high priority. It's something that has been talked about for a very long period. And we have a chance to bring this to fruition. And we have talked about being prudent, and prudent seems to be the byword. I fully support that in many ways. And I'm pleased that even though we've talked about the extra money has and is being proposed for this proposal. So I hope that's a good sign. Quite frankly, I think we should support it. We should support it for the benefit of the people of our district and in Maine, the town of Daventry. And I think it will bring a lot of benefits to the town, and we need to get it up and operating and get it committed before we go to being a unitary authority. So that's where I'm coming from on that one.
Thanks, Councillor Hills. Councillor Rendell.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got reservations over this. I've been speaking to many people. When you say about across the district it's well supported, well, I'd have to disagree, because when I speak to people over in Malton and Brixworth, they wouldn't come across to Daventry necessarily for a cinema, because they would go to Northampton. So the people in the Daventry town, a lot of people have said they're supportive of a cinema, but there have been a huge amount that have said, but not where you want to build it, because they feel that it's in the wrong place. To have this increase from 8.2 million to 12.3 million, now if you'd come with a report to say within that 4 million increase you were going to include a bowling alley and different things going on that people also want out there, then I will be mindful to support it. But just to have an increase of 4 million, so to spend 12.3 million on a building, because that's what I would call it, a building, because we haven't secured anybody as yet to run it. So to me, that is still an extremely high risk. I don't feel that I could support this. There have been many suggestions that actually, why didn't we use, if this building was going to become redundant, this building would make a lovely library, as well as it could be adapted into a cinema, on what is going to become of this building. And as for the library going into the Abbey, I've got reservations over that as well, parking down that end of town, well, car parking across the town anyway is it's not good. That end of town, there's hardly ever a parking space to be found. I felt that it's not going to be easily accessible for anybody with a disability. It's very narrow in there, and I would hate to see a library that cannot be accessed by all. So I've got severe reservations on both of these projects, Chairman.
Well, Councillor Randall, it's very, very interesting, and it's very interesting that you actually admit tonight that you don't support the scheme, bearing in mind the majority of the public do support the scheme. And when you talk about people in Malton, and I live in Brixworth, you do tend to go either to Harbour or you go down to Northampton in particular for cinema. And like people around this area, closer to Daventry, and one of the reasons why people say in Long Buckby or other areas want a cinema closer to them, Daventry's their ideal place. And also it'll bring business into Daventry, footfall, lots more spending money into Daventry, which equates to more jobs for the local people. So I'm just very surprised by your lack of vision about what this can do. It might not be your idea. It's like this thing about planning. It's always the way in planning. You have a vision of your cinema in your mind. And we talk about multi-screen cinema here, 3 or 4 screens. And also the public square, the idea that the public square should be a high-quality public square is so people can come to Daventry, go to eateries and eat out, go to the cinema if they wish to, go to some pubs or eat in other places, and actually enjoy the ambience of a nice area to actually sit out and enjoy, especially on a good summer's day, even though today wasn't bad in November. But I'm just trying to say it's about that vision, about creating a future where people will get drawn to Daventry and bring more money into the town. And it's not just Daventry town, it's the district area as well. But thanks for your comments anyway.
Can I just come back to that one, Councillor Miller?
Yes.
I would have thought that you'd know by now that when I make a decision, it isn't a decision about myself. I make a decision on what everybody else out there is telling me. And I'm always listening to what they have to say. I listen to their suggestions. I always put out on social media. I like to know what people's thoughts are because it isn't about me. I'm elected to be the voice of the people. And what the people are saying, and I don't know if it was in that consultation, that whether they would support it if there wasn't an operator, would they be happy for a building to be built without the security of an operator? I don't know whether that was in that consultation, but I wondered if that would be the same, because we have been out there for I don't know how many years now looking for somebody to take this project on, and as yet nobody has taken that project on. So what I'm saying is this is a public money of 12.3 million that we are voting on, and so it's not about what I want, it's about whether that is a risk. What else could we get for that 12.3 million for the people of this district that would benefit far more people?
Councillor Randall, can I just say to you very kindly, we've got a consultation sponsors which we're going to know more about this coming week, next week. So we see what the people say in the consultation.
Well, that's like Councillor Richard said, it would have been good to have a look at this report.
Building and having no operators, please.
Certainly. I mean, there's a few points probably worth picking up briefly. In terms of disabled access, I think we'll all totally agree. If it didn't have suitable disabled access, it would be the wrong thing to do. The design is designed to ensure that everybody has access. So we don't need to be concerned about that. In terms of parking, you've already agreed tonight to provide additional car parking at Eastern Way and also the Chapel Lane area. And if we need to look at adjusting the hours of stay, the durations of stay, things like that, to make sure the right kind of parking is available in the car parks, that can be looked at as well. In terms of the operator, we advised members when the original report went through that would be a risk, and of course it remains a risk. Having said which, we have 10 commercial operators looking at taking this on. It's a completely different position to where we were before, where there were operators then who would have happily taken the scheme that Henry Boot had built. The scheme wasn't practically viable for Henry Boot. So it wasn't that there was no operator, it was no developer who wanted to do it. The council, if this is agreed, is choosing to be the developer. It's a very, very different position. Sorry, was something else I missed?
Councillor.
Two quick points, Chairman. Councillor Randall doesn't want the cinema in Daventry, doesn't think it's right. I'd love it in Long Buckby.
Got space for it.
We've got a space for it, we've got a car park for it, and we've got some, you can build it in Monblock Big.
What for 12 million?
No problem, I'll know the planning chairman, I'm sure you get planning permission. But going back to the other point, Chairman, if this council hadn't been prudent, and finance officers with our money, and sort of wrote in as we expect them to as professional officers, that percentage so that we don't go down, there is a little bit over. You wouldn't be looking at extra money here, would you? You wouldn't get your extra money when things cost a little more. So being prudent is a good example of how it helps this council, and it has helped this council in the past.
Thank you, Councillor Oswald. Councillor Guildford?
Well, I tend to disagree that it's in the wrong place. I alluded to it earlier that I support project improvement. We have to build something of quality. Something not of quality can become a white elephant. Here we're getting a library because of where this is being placed. So it's a win-win situation. And in the report itself, it says how it links to the high street and revitalises the high street. You've got the walk-through. I certainly wouldn't want to see it on a car park out of town. We're trying to revitalise our centre here. So I would tend to disagree, and I would also say that I go around many parishes. Yes, the people in Malton won't use it, but I work in the town. I get approached and they're all asking me, how's it going? When's it going to be built? Great. They are looking forward to this going up in the town.
Thank you, Councillor Guildford. Councillor Chandler?
Thank you,
Two more
Chair.
speakers, and I'll give up to Councillor James. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Two brief comments. One is that when I was chairman of this council 2 years ago, I spent a lot of time going around talking to people, obviously, and I spent more time in Daventry town than I've ever spent in Daventry town, and everybody I met who knew who I was because they'd seen the photographs in the press wanted to tell me things, but the one thing that they all wanted to tell me was what they really wanted in Daventry was more better shops and a cinema. And the other point I wanted to make, Chairman, is that as a frequent user of the Abbey building, I can confirm that it's entirely accessible.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. You are our disability champion. Thank you for that. And the final speaker, Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Chair. I find it very astonishing, actually, that Councillor Randall could say it's in the wrong place and it's not supported. It's interesting because I also not only live in the town but also represent the ward that it's going to be placed in. And very similar to other members, I actually have overwhelming support for it. Of course, as that's with my district councillor ward member hat on, I completely support it. I couldn't think of a better place for it. It's going to have a multiplier effect. As Councillor Guildford said, bringing in extra footfall into the town, it's beautifully connected. It's going to be good for the town. Also, even in times when people think there is no life in town, if you only have to look on Sheep Street and the new bakery that will be launched there soon. So we do have the opportunity to restore our high streets, and this is a really good vehicle for that. Of course, my only reservation about it would be that it is going to cost potentially £1.3 million. But I think also, as Councillor Guildford said and Councillor Osborne said, we've made provisions for this by being prudent, and I fully support this, and I hope the rest of the members also get behind it, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Ward. Back to you, Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, if I can just reiterate what has been said, the location of this centre, it's going there because it ticks all the boxes. It's a site that can be developed without too much disruption to other traders within the town during the construction period. It's highly accessible. The business team are well aware of footfall and foot flow within the central area, and this, it ideally fits that flow pattern. It would certainly regenerate it and encourage retail activity and other activity in that particular location. And remember, it's not just a cinema, it's a couple of restaurants as well, the sizable restaurants too. So it's a perfect location.
On the public square.
Yeah. I mean, the original TCB one would have been the whole of that car park back at Argos, which would have been very, very expensive and totally unviable. But it does leave that car park there. Maybe part of that in future years, who knows? That might too be suitable for some sort of
Thank you, Councillor James.
I say that. Now the other point I'd like to do is to emphasise once again the timescale. We made this decision in May of this year, and we have got this far already. We've already had both public and stakeholder consultation, and we're now getting ready to motor on so we can get this contract signed, and we can do with the support of all members of this council in ensuring that this scheme is successful.
Thank you, Councillor James. You have 7 recommendations struck group members. Those in favour?
Agreed.
Those against? 1 against. Any abstentions? 1 abstention, sis. So all in agreed, apart 1 abstention and 1 against. Okay. Thank you. That's gone through. We now move on to item 6.2, request by Reach for Health for new premises, Councillor Hills. Page 79, yeah. Page 79.
Page 79, everybody. I want to make sure you've all got the page, Okay.
Yes, please,
Right,
please,
thank you.
thank you.
Right, Reach for Health. Strategy group members, you've all got the details in front of you, together with the officer's recommendation to support option 1. I have to tell you that in my portfolio role, I cannot support it. I have the greatest respect for our officers, and I fully realise they must observe diligence in all they do. But I have to disagree with their findings, and I think it's only fair that I outline some of my reasons. Firstly, in my portfolio role, I have visited their premises on several occasions. This is a charity that does tremendous work with patients who are referred to them. I know that our MP, Chris Hitton-Harris, is fully supportive and has written several times to the council on this, and the last one being the 14th of November, which went to the leader, deputy leader and the chief executive, and his recommendation is enclosed in that. I also had a discussion with him a few days ago. His comment was, unless you have visited the site, seen the facilities and spoken to users, you cannot contemplate the benefits to the patients and the community. It is totally unique. I certainly echo those comments. I have also been a regular visitor, spoken to patients recovering from hip operations, recovering from strokes, some with mental health issues, some with Parkinson's, and many, many more. I have also spoken to Dr. Davis, who refers patients to them. He is also fully supportive. A couple of examples, I'm not going to go through the report page by page, but where I cannot agree with the report. He talks about specialist equipment. Yes, this is costly, but much of this is already in place, purchased over the years by their own fundraising efforts and can be transferred to the new building. So a lot of that is already covered. He also talks about the need and a sports rehabilitation unit at Malton. That is, I know, an excellent unit. It's used by lots of big clubs, including my club, West Ham. It's playing sport, let's put it this way. The big clubs have their facilities. The ordinary sports person playing sport gets an injury, it could be a sprained ankle or something like that, and he goes to the doctor. They say, you strap it up, take some painkillers, and take a week off work. The ordinary man or woman cannot always afford to do this. And certainly if someone or somewhere local is available, they would welcome this. In my portfolio role, I speak to clubs and sports people. They would welcome this. Finally, to me, the overall evidence is there why we must support them. A few months ago, I took 2 groups of 6 councillors into Reach for Health. They were shown around, they saw the specialist equipment, spoke to users, and I am certain they were all suitably impressed. Reach for Health supplied 2 large booklets of supplementary information, and there they are, these are them. And supporting letters, etc. There's also been a letter of support, one recently to a customer care at the council, which I believe a lot of you have seen. I had a phone call from Councillor Lomax this morning. She was here earlier, but she's had to go. Who's a user of the facilities, totally supportive and quite frankly perplexed by this report. There is a report from patients, doctors, public, and I believe from those members who took time to visit, and even on Sunday at the church regarding on Remembrance Sunday, Callum Michael Webber mentioned the good work of Reach for Health and the Army Commandant. So that got a mention. So the church supports it as well. We cannot and must not abandon this facility. As I stated, I cannot support option 1 and throw the other 2 options open for discussion because we need a bit more meat on the bone in these 2 and more discussion and more information before coming back with my recommendations. And finally, I would say to all the members here when I look around, none of us know what's in store for the future. We do not know when and if we could be needing a facility of this sort ourselves. So I would ask you to back it. Let's discuss the other 2 options and from there see how we can move it forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I read this paper and we've had a huge debate at our group about this as well. I cannot support the recommendation here tonight that has been asked for on option 1. Through much debate, I think Reach for Health is probably one of the worst things that's happened to it is it's a secret. And it's been a secret for far too long. And I think Reach for Health, if we had something like this in the 80s, a lot of people who are suffering today in later life wouldn't be going through the injuries of suffering through broken bones and sciatica that they do today. So I would like this to go to full council, so I would like to push this through to full council, and I would recommend that the funding, and I'm sorry to offend the 1.1 officer and the portfolio holder for finance, but I would like this to go through, that it's fully funded by this council. The land is owned by DDC. If it's fully funded by DDC and we go into unitary, then this building will go into unitary if there is for any reason that Reach for Health doesn't exist. So it will always be owned by the people of the district and the unitary going forward, so South Northants and the borough. So my recommendation would be that we push this through, we go for option 3 if there's no business plan that Reach for Health can bring to the table. But I would like to see more meat on the bone and I would like to have more discussions about this before we go to full council.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair. It's an exciting meeting for me because it's nice to be on the same side as a lot of our opposition in terms of
Do it more often then.
Yeah.
Much more fun.
But I mean, very briefly, it's already been said that, and not only through the feedback that we've had from the MP and the feedback that we get from doctors, surgeries, GPs, but actually just looking at the general turnout of people in this chamber tonight is something that we very rarely see, so it's very important to take on board how important that is. I find it interesting this is a meeting where we have just committed to an extra sort of £4 point something million in spending on the cinema development, From the numbers that I've seen, the capacity of that cinema is comparable to the numbers of people who attend Reach for Health and the clients of it. What's not comparable is the actual benefit that those people gain from it. A night at the cinema is absolutely nothing in comparison to the rehabilitation that people receive from this centre, and it's a fraction of the cost of what we're spending on other things. Viability is brought up quite a lot in this report with the recommendation that it's not currently viable. To me, I'm reminded that this is a council that spent several £1 million drawing pictures of a canal, which didn't get brought into fruition, so that was definitely not viable, and this is definitely more viable. And in previous arguments we've had before, and things that we've opposed actually, we've been told, people have turned around to us and told us that, well, DDC isn't going to exist quite soon, so we need to get this money spent now on something that's a benefit for the people of this residents, for the residents of this town. So that's why I stand by it. This is money that we need to spend. Let's spend it now while we actually have this money for something that's making a massive impact to the residents of the town.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Randall?
Thank you, Chairman. I would definitely go for option 3. This is a very easy decision for me to make. Reading through the report where it says it's not viable, this has been going for 25 years, so I don't know where you get the idea that it's, in the report that it's not viable. Even over the last month, fundraising has exceeded more than £7,000, and that's been ongoing from the time that Reach for Health has been going. And people are very keen to fundraise because they see the benefits of what this organisation does. And not only does it helps in all ways really. It's like a community hub. And I was when I go down there, there's always people sitting there, like carers are in the little room, the entrance room, and they sit and have a chat and have a coffee. And it's just a very personalised organisation that I feel needs our full support, and I would happily go with option 3.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor Organ?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've sort of split this into 3 areas, really, looking at it. There is a lot of material, and there's been a lot of debate, and there's a lot of counter-argument and counter-opinion on this. So the first area I sort of looked at is the risk. The risk of the expenditure, the risk of the viability. I think Councillor Randall raises a good point. With viability, it's been going on for 25 years and it's still alive and kicking, so they must be doing something right. It may well be that there are some things in the operating of that business that do not draw a lot of confidence in people that have far more knowledge of these things than me. But needless to say, it has been going for 25 years. And I would rather like us to think about, when the Paralympics came out of the great work done in Stoke Mandeville Hospital, and that was previously on my patch in a previous public service life, and I saw that unit grow from a very small unit to an internationally renowned organisation for helping people. Now, I would rather than have a go at the viability on a business sense, look at the possibility of what this could be, not only for the district, but for the region, and even possibly nationally. This could be an absolute godsend to so many people, and to be start of something quite big and quite needed within our community. When you look at the savings that are protected by the NHS with regard to getting people back to becoming self-reliant and less reliant on the state, there are so many good points to this. So the viability is accepted. I accept professionals have looked at it, but I think also we need to be more optimistic on that. And the second part of the risk is, okay, say it does go belly up. None of us have got a crystal ball, and in 2 years' time it goes belly up and we lose it all. One of the big things about this council that has impressed me is how you mitigate. You put mitigation into ensuring as best we can that any investment we put in to public structures, to public causes, we can claw back in the event of something going wrong. Now, we talked about the 12 million being spent on the cinema. There is risks there. But I'm sure that we have mitigation there to ensure as best we can to protect valuable public money, your public money at the back, it's your money. And so I've got every confidence that the risk is taken care of. For me, it's a big tick. Criteria. Now, one thing that concerned me in option 2 was the last line that it said, and the proposed scoring is enough to meet the council's given criteria. If there is anything that meets one of the 4 pillars of the vision of this council, surely it is this establishment. And I quote, to develop a better district, we need to promote healthy, safe and strong communities and individuals. Now the specification of the criteria, there's something wrong there. If the specification of a criteria cannot see how this unit benefits everybody and actually is an important part of our community and would pass any normal criteria, then the criteria is wrong, not the actual subject matter here. And I would say, for me, a big tick. It meets the criteria as far as I'm concerned with regard to the vision and what we are trying to do for the people of this district. And the final area is finance. Now, I want to do the right thing on finances. I do not want us to add to debt and hardship for the future of our residents. And I know it says here that it is likely to put council into a borrowing position, and I would like to have more detail on, can we fund this without borrowing? If we do have to borrow, how much and what impact is that going to have? Because I do believe that we should live within our means. I do not believe we should be necessarily borrowing to finance this type of activity. And there for me is the dilemma. So, Chair, what I'm looking for is some reassurance that if we are going to fully fund it, what real impact is that going to have on our finances, on our credibility as a prudent council, and if that box can be ticked, then I'm in full support of it. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very encouraged by what people have said, members of the other side, as it were, and strangely like Councillor Ramsey, we all seem to be in agreement, which is fantastic. I have to say, I was incredibly disappointed when I read the report. I couldn't see where those conclusions were brought up from. I do wonder whether perhaps officers need to revisit what their recommendations are and whether they were actually working along the right lines. But as I say, I'm comforted by what I've heard. What I thought is that we could perhaps project ourselves into the future a little bit, into the world of when we may be a unitary council. If we cast our minds to those members that were involved in the council meetings, that we had the PwC report, and I remember that one of the big elements of that is the unitary will not make it if we just create it and let it get on with it. Something substantial has to change, some fantastic new ways of operating have to be brought about. And the integration of things like healthcare, social care and so on would all be factors in this. And here we have Reach for Health, something that can have a massive impact on social care and healthcare. So when the unitary has some sort of budgetary responsibility, and maybe it never does, but I would assume it will have some responsibility, that by encouraging Reach for Health, by providing new premises, it means that overall healthcare is improved, but the money spent on healthcare in other areas goes down. So therefore this could be one of the best investments this council ever has to make. So I encourage it, and I hope all members who can vote tonight will vote for this.
That's Councillor Davis. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with an awful lot that's been said tonight. I think the government says in its strategy, when it looks at investment in public works through agreement, I think it says good health and a strong economy are interrelated, and some things don't actually have a monetary value, although you can actually apply that to them, and I think that should be taken into account when we look at viability. Councillor Augers also said that he's read out one of the lines from our vision, which does really, for me, completely encompass what Reach for Health tries to do. And that's got to be at the core of what it does. Also, we have the local strategic partnership report, the plan for 2017 to 20, which the community strategy has a focus on health and well-being, a focus on the well-being of residents in the district, a focus on what we, as a partnership of organisations, can do to help our residents. I also think that basically sums it up as well. You yourself, Councillor, sent us out a health report from the county this week, and I think that echoes our core vision. I think it echoes that document, and I think it echoes everything that people believe in this room. Going forward, we are going to unitary. It's going to be very, very difficult. I think Reach for Health can be a shining star in something that we've already heard, perhaps a new way of doing things. You know, let's look beyond just what we've got in front of us. Let's look to the future. This could be the start of something really, really big going forward, and a model for other places and other organisations. This could be a magnet for people to come to. My opinion is, I think the danger of this new building is it will be actually swamped by people from all over the place. We've heard reports today on the radio just about what's happening in the National Health Service and our population going forward. I don't see any danger of a lack of customers for this place. I just do not see how that's going to happen. We can only expect more people that want these services. We're told every day our National Health Service cannot cope with the ageing population, the ever-increasing demands. And we also know that it's actually better to prevent things than try to cure them. Now, obviously you've got to cure them as well, and I think that's part of Reach for Health, but it is also about that prevention and getting people in the right place. Yes, money is an issue. Money is certainly an issue. But in the scheme of things, I think this could be saving Unitary Authority or this whole community money going forward. And I think we have to be brave on this, and I think I would look to the strategy group for proposing option 3. And as for the meat on the bone, I think there's more than enough in those reports to say that this is a viable option. And I think there's more than enough that this council should take. Well, I don't think it's a risk. I think this council should take the opportunity of putting something fantastic and excellent in this town and take it forward a step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley. Councillor Gilbert.
Okay, I totally agree, and I can't support Officer's recommendation in this report. I'm probably going to go against the trend slightly, because I am still swaying between option 2 and option 3, and that is because of my day job. There is going to be significant savings within the health economy on this. So I would have liked to have seen the health economy put some money into this project as well. I'm only saying that, as I say, because of my day job. If I wasn't in my day job, I'd probably be going straight for option 3. What concerns me about the report, though, is on page 2 it states it does not meet the objectives under community themes. Back in May, this council set strategic direction to support projects that would leave a legacy using the money the residents of this council have paid over to us to lead dental services. As I say, I'm swaying between the two, but whichever option you go for, I think there has to be a further amendment, and I think there has to be a standalone recommendation that the current community grants criteria are amended to enable grants to be approved that address issues beyond the traditional focus of the current DDC community grant scoring matrix, to enable funds to be designated to allow for activities to be approved that fall outside the business as usual of this council. By way of example, maximise opportunities to deliver additional improvements in Daventry district, undertake activities that normally fall within the remit of NCC, and assist in the health economy of the district. This project will assist the new unitary. This is a new way of thinking, as my colleague said, and that going forward it would be a positive to the unitary. I propose this by virtue of the fact that I thought this was already what members had approved as part of the recent review of the community grant scheme. I also understood as part of this review, grants be approved, for example, for up to the full amount requested. where a parish council had applied in recognition of the fact they will incur future expenditure in the precinct. Again, this is something I thought we'd given direction to. So, as I said earlier, I'm still making up my mind between 2 and 3 and wondered if there's any way we can approach the health economy to see that they could input some money into this. But if there's a scenario where we could lose this facility if I didn't go with option 3, then I'd have to go with option 3. But, as I said, I also think we need to, as part of this evening's debate, ask Councillor Hills to have an amendment put forward so that we can address the scoring matrix in the grant criteria.
Which you think neglects this application?
Yes, well, it says here, and that it's proposed scoring enough to meet council's grant. It won't. We need to amend the grant.
Okay, we'll come back on that point, Councillor Guildford. Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Chairman. 2 or 3 little comments. If I might begin by offering a short piece of advice to new members, especially those who represent town boards. We're talking here about the district, not just about the town.
It's force a habit.
I know, you're elected to represent town people, so they're obviously foremost in your mind. I have to say that until about 2.5 months ago, I'd never heard of Reach for Help. I spent 9 weeks in hospital, as many members will remember, and at least 7 of those 9 weeks were spent in hospital because the hospital couldn't decide how I was going to be properly cared for if they let me out. Had I known about this, I would have pressed for sending me home, because I knew that once I was at home, I could get myself to Daventry, and I was sure that from what I now know about Reach for Health, they would have been able to help me. As it was, that didn't happen. I learned about it because somebody I was in hospital with for the last 3 weeks of my stay, we got on so well together that we meet once a month for lunch. And at our meeting 2.5 months ago, he happened to mention that he used Reach for Help. Now he lives in Ravensthorpe, which is in the district, so what I'm saying here, Chairman, is that one of the problems perhaps of Reach for Health is that people don't know about it, so they can't see the potential benefit of supporting it. And it also occurs to me, Chairman, that if this organisation were to fulfil its ambition, that might provide quite a jewel in the crown of the West Northamptonshire Council.
Thank you. Thanks for naming the new council. Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I will be very brief because I agree with 90% at least of what has been said.
That's good for you, that's right.
Normally I find Councillor Hills a little boring, but I thought he was inspiring tonight, and I'm very grateful to him for the statement that he made in opening the discussion. I think that for most of what he said, he was spot on. So can I just focus on the bit that concerns me? And that is that there should still be a debate between option 2 and option 3. Reach for Health can't deliver a service from half a building. Where is the other half of the funding going to come from? The health service has been mentioned, but the health services problems are just about as dire as the county councils. I think that there is a much stronger financial case for actually going ahead and say, let's get ahead and do this. I've got in front of me, I don't know if people have printed off the supplementary notes that Reach for Health sent and you circulated. And on page 6, there were some of the things that Councillor Arger has referred to some of them. But if we need any further financial justification, you know, the cost of a hip fracture, or sorry, the saving from a hip fracture that's prevented is 15,000. Cardiac rehabilitation, 2,000 visits a year for cardiac rehabilitation. And yet you have the NHS audit proposal stating that rehabilitation reduces hospital readmissions by 18%. Hospital readmissions cost £610 a day, excluding treatment. Now, I'm not a doctor, I don't know how long that you need to be readmitted for, but, you know, supposing that's a week, that's 4,000. I think that you could go through the list here, and you could show that the saving that is being generated by Reach for Health would very quickly cover the costs. And indeed, that appears to be the conclusion that the study at Hull University reached. It is there. The cost implications of Reach for Health are more than justified in terms of cost, benefits and savings to the local health and social care services. Now, of course, these are not district council responsibilities at the moment, but we are about to be converted into, taken over by something that will be responsible for adult social care. We have a county council that at the moment has got to spend about 150 million, something of that sort, on adult social care, struggling to be able to do it. Here we have a project that has got the capacity to actually reduce the demands by keeping people mobile, so that they don't need the same in-house support, reduces the number of admissions. It just strikes me that this is an obvious thing for us to do. I would therefore be disappointed if we were to mess around by saying that, look, let's actually talk about, you know, who else could we get to fund a bit of it. I think that we have got to go for this. And I would make a further suggestion. The figure that has been suggested, I understand, includes a 20% contingency allowance. Well, let's hope that in the construction of this building, they don't need to use all of that contingency. I would like to see that we do a deal that we set the budget, and what is left over, invite them to use it, so that they don't need to wait around for a few extra years fundraising for the extra apparatus that they feel that they need.
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it is a topsy-turvy evening, isn't it? Because I may well sound like an outlier on this topic this evening. And actually, it's really interesting because I fully support Reach for Health, their objectives and the work they do. And really my only point on this is to add an element of sobriety into the debate, and probably in that respect I'm closest to Councillor Guildford. I'd really very quickly like to start from the point, I've never, in my experience as councillor that I can recall, seen a time when I've seen the portfolio holder presenting actually disagreeing with the paper. And
that's happened before.
It probably has happened before, but I've only been here sort of six years. And this really leaves me a bit of a puzzle, because obviously we've had, if you like, professional expertise in terms of Councillor Guildford's, perhaps favouring option 2 or maybe the third option. And then we've got officer advice, which says there's some uncertainty around the numbers, and of course Councillor Walker looked at that as well. And I'm rather left puzzled about it actually. So I'm not really sure deep down what the fundamental concerns are which have led us to this recommendation. But it does concern me that we have potentially the possibility of committing 1.48 million while we do have some uncertainty. And of course there's risk in every project. So I don't, on a personal level, Reach for Health, I would absolutely endorse what they do and support it in terms of the third option. However, as portfolio holder, I do have some concerns about the due diligence, etc. is raised. Actually, what I'd like to see is the shape of an amendment come forward so I can take a view on how I'd vote for it. But I certainly wish them well and would like to support it, but I think it's about the shape of the deal and how that's constructed. And in any event, having any monies forwarded by building or grants subject to much more checking and a better business case. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Osborne.
Similar view to the previous speaker. I too have no problem with what Reach for Health does, what it has done, and hopefully it will do in the future. the problem I have is, first of all, the fact that we're officer bashing, they don't like the report, a lot of members don't like the report. That's what we employ officers for, to give their professional opinion. They've given their professional opinion, that's what they're employed to do. Now, I'm not an officer goody-goody. I bash more officers than you've had hot dinners, I can assure you. But in this particular, I hope not. I have over my 30 years here. But this one, I will defend them. We employ them to do a professional job and to give us their professional opinion. This is their professional opinion. I don't actually know. I've read the papers a few times. I can see some guests. How much is it going to cost option 3? I can't see the total cost anywhere.
1.4 is it? 1.48.
Well, is that definite? Are the facilities going to be what is judged and what is costed? I'm not so sure, and I have a tendency to think I'm not so keen on option 3. I can't fully support it. I have some doubts the same way as officers. And where is the money coming from as well?
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Green.
You can't have half a heart attack, mate.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chairman. I realise that we're all looking at this very carefully, at all the issues that officers have raised, as we would expect them to. But it will remain a capital asset for the future. So you're not putting 1.4 million into something that's just going to disappear. The land and the buildings will be there. So I don't see that as a problem, provided that we can find the 1.4 million. But this is a great opportunity to invest in the future health and well-being of our communities and ever-increasing population. And as we go into unitary, I think there's going to be an even higher demand. Might even need bigger premises. Our time is limited to leave such a legacy. And Reach for Health itself, they have raised funds and steadily invested and equipped themselves to meet many various needs. And we do have this opportunity to set them up for the future. Looking at the expenditure of 1.4, I hope that we can look at this again. I'm not sure about option 2 because I can't see us getting any money out of the NHS. But presumably officers themselves, because they've got considerable experience in looking for grants, they probably looked carefully at option 2. So perhaps that's why they proposed option 1. However, I would be prepared to support option 3 on further information. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ridley. I appreciate everyone's spoken nearly on the council. I want to say a few words myself, but any other councillors who haven't spoken who wish to make a comment. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to bring to everybody's attention a pamphlet that has been produced by Reach for Health. Yes. I received it through my door, but I believe that all councillors haven't. And I think it would be a useful tool for all councillors to be sent a copy of this, whether you've seen it or not. I think it'll help put people's minds at rest. Sorry, Chairman?
Why didn't you come through your door?
I wonder. But I think it would be very useful, and I think our hearts and minds are all going in the right direction. In the case with things like this, it will help put your minds at peace as well, knowing that we are doing the right thing.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Anyone else hasn't spoken wants to speak? Okay. Can I say a few words as leader? Now I'm going to hand over to the officers, obviously, on the points you've raised. As part of my role as leader, I'm the representative to the District and Boroughs on the Health and Wellbeing Board. I was at a meeting this morning, and at that meeting I raised the issue of Reach for Health. At the time I was there, because I had to go to the opening of the 845 link road, which was very exciting. We're long awaited after 70 years of getting the link road across. So they made the route between Northampton and Daventry a lot easier to get the access, and also to help the growth of Daventry moving forward. At that meeting, I raised the issue because some of those testimonials which Reach for Health have actually produced come from the medical establishment, and obviously some of those medical establishments are there this morning. And the point I was asking was, well, why don't the CCG actually put money in as well? Because actually, the Reach for Health, if it works well, it's actually going to save the NHS money, save the CCG money, by preventing people getting to hospital, by using their facilities. There's another case there where really some funding could actually come in from the health service. And I find it quite extraordinary, actually, bearing in mind the testimonials that we've received from the health service, that they're not actually suggested anyway, because they have got money. I'm not saying they're not tight on revenue, but they have capital monies, and they have property, and they have all these sort of things in the NHS. So I'm going to contact, I've got a meeting coming up with actually the new Chief Executive of the aligned CCG of Nen and Corby. I might try to bring that meeting forward before Council, because I think there's an opportunity to have that discussion at least, because as leader and all members have a responsibility to be said already from the resources portfolio holder to make sure we spend our money as wisely as we can and explore options before we commit going down the line. I'm a great supporter of the Reach for Health project. I think it's a fantastic facility. I think it could grow, as people said. I think there's a real opportunity here. This could be an exemplar moving forward. But I think as council members, we have a duty also to make sure, as the point Councillor Guildford and Councillor Osborne said, to try and make sure we cover all those options before we take that final decision at Council in December. And it will have to be in December, I think. We can't leave it any longer than that, so I don't want to delay it any further than that. So I think that's the point we need to get between now and then. I think one or two things were said actually. It's about, I know lots of people know about this because I get lobbied and people talk about Reach for Health wherever I go actually. So the name's out there, so Reach for Health has done well in that sense. There's a lot of people out there who know about Reach for Health, even though Councillor Charlton didn't really until recently when he actually needed them maybe or could have used them. But the point about this is it's about public sector money. No, I'm not going back, I'm just going to do my piece first. Public sector money is the key here. This is how I see the unitary. What part of our bit of government is about drawing things together to get better value out of the public sector first. And one of the things it's about moving forward is about trying to find new ways of working. And that's sort of in a sense called, because we look at what we have now, it's about how we move forward with the tighter budget strings all round. And the county council are going to leave a legacy that's going to need some real work on how we make the new unitaries work. But I think the point of this is about transformation. And public sector transformation for me, I've been quite keen, as members know here, and we have as a council, on how we engage the public health sector into the local government sector, in a sense, when we move forward. I think the point about this is, I'm not convinced quite yet. I know how difficult it is to get money out of the NHS, and we have got a good example in Brixworth, where we actually got a brand new surgery on the back of development. But I can tell you now, to get that, we had to go to the top of the NHS, and we had to go to the top of the NHS and also go to the RMP through that to our top of it, and also to the Secretary of State. So what I'm trying to say there, to get movement on that one issue of surgery in one place, we had to go back to the top of the train, because there's always layers of bureaucracy in the NHS, and it takes a long time to feed through. So what I was going to maybe say tonight is hear what everyone said, and it's been very, very positive about Reach for Health. I think what we'll come to office in a minute about the finances and what can be done there. I think the point we're saying is there's a very clear majority, or vast majority of members who support this proposal. There's three options there. I'd like to see, I'm not going to say 1, 2 or 3 yet, I'd like to explore whether the NHS, there's any way of getting any money out of the NHS. Because I think not to do that first would be a dereliction of our duty. But if it's not possible, then I would support option 3. But then we need to take the advice now of our 151 officer, and then we can come back to the first debate. That's your turn.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up really in terms of a comment from Councillor Howard in terms of whether as the 151 officer I'm offended as to his recommendation. I'd like to remind all members and all members of the public, as the statutory 151 officer, I'm obliged to give impartial advice to members, and it is impartial, but I have to look at a fiduciary duty to all taxpayers to make sure that our money is looked after, and I come at it from the whole view. So in terms of not having any capital resources, there's a very good chance we'll have to borrow. We could look at our reserves in terms of what we have in revenue. The earmarked reserves are exactly that. They are earmarked for things. So the only other ones are our general reserves. And as we've heard already tonight, our general reserves are going to be severely called upon to deliver day-to-day services. So it's about affordability as well for the services that this council already provide. So I just want to remind members that it is impartial, and I'm by no means offended by whichever way members go. And I'm there to advise you as to the consequences of your decisions. And in fact, if we were to borrow, off the top of my head, for every £1 million in terms of borrowing costs, and there's lots of things to take into account in terms of the timescales, and then also the accounting where we have to make a minimum revenue provision, but you'd be looking at somewhere between 6 and 7%. So £70,000 for every £1 million added to the costs of your general fund, which is already showing significant deficits.
Thank you, Alderman. And I just want to say that Alder actually is a very highly respected 151 officer. You have a very strong team at Daventry, you have had over the years, a very strong team of management and also staff, and that's well regarded by all, so there's nothing personal here. This is about members have a view on something, and our officers here have in the past, without, I have to be honest about this, over the years, have delivered. But they've also provided advice, and the point we're saying tonight is that these officers tonight are getting a very clear position from members what their preferred option as a majority are. So therefore what we rely upon now is for officers to tell us what's possible, what's not possible. I'm saying the decision's not taken tonight, the recommendation is taken tonight, and the decision will be taken to council on December the 5th or 6th. That's when the decision will be taken. So I'll just take a few more comments, and then is any other officer wants to speak now before no? Oh, Maria.
Oh, yes.
Just Maria.
Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd just like to start by saying that this is not a question of whether Reach for Help is a fantastic facility or not. I'm absolutely convinced it's a fantastic facility. I've been there myself, I've looked through all the paperwork. The fact is, officers with collective expertise and experience covering decades of assessing community and voluntary sector business cases have concluded, based on the information you've got now, that this is not something that we can recommend for funding. Now, just to confirm, Reach for Help itself has been going since 2010. It evolved from the one-to-one gym that went in the background, but as a charitable organisation, it's been going since 2010, as it's going on the report. We'll just cover the borrowing point. In answer to Councillor Guildford's question, the grants criteria changes in July 2018 were about allowing for exceptional circumstances. In exceptional circumstances, parishes can make applications, they can, whereas they used to be restricted except for the very small one-off events. Match funding used to be an essential criteria, or match contribution or match funding, and that is now desirable rather than essential. And in exceptional circumstances, community sector, voluntary sector grants of more than 15k could be awarded. Now, we weren't looking at this proposal purely as a community voluntary sector fund. Had this been recommended for funding, it's a standalone project. It wasn't about using the 310,000 set aside for community and voluntary sector funding. By any definition, this is much bigger than that. But the task given to me and my team and my colleagues in finance was to go through this and look at this as a standalone project. So meeting only today, it's very clear the NHS is undergoing transformation that's going to take up a lot of energy over many years to come. But it's fair to say that the NHS, particularly outside primary care, is not geared up to invest in prevention. The whole premise with the National Health Service, very much ingrained, is that it's about bumhole seats in clinics and heads on beds. So only at our Chief Housing Officers meeting today will we talk about that. So health generally, when it comes to health prevention, the only people thinking about that on a daily basis is primary care to a degree and local authorities. Ourselves to a lesser degree, obviously, than the County Council at the moment. And just one more point of clarification, I made a note. Option 2, when we talk about external funding, that isn't necessarily whether we just get that from a health source. That's about getting your business case put together and exploring whether various sources of external funding might be available. So that could be charitable, health, lottery, central government funding, or any other public sources. So I just wanted to clarify those points.
Thank you, Stephen. Simon, you want to make a point?
Sure, for me, it's not to do with the main part of the debate by any means. It was the suggestion of an amendment, additional recommendation rather from Councillor Guildford about revising community grants criteria on the back of this case. We are well managed as an authority, and I would not suggest that we need to take one case as an illustration of a failure of the rest of the grants process. Reasons already been given. I would urge you not to do that from a good governance perspective, not to consider that proposal. Well, duly seconded in that sense, but we don't have those segments for the committee to be there. But if you wouldn't mind, I would be happy that we would do that.
Thank you, Simon. Just before I come back on members, I just want to say two things. On the Health and Wellbeing Board, districts and boroughs are all about prevention. That's our role. So prevention is our role as districts and boroughs. That sort of fits in with the agenda tonight. And the other point really is that I find it's fascinating. Our MP, Christine Hasley, is a great supporter of the project. Well, government funding is one thing you said over here, so maybe I can write to Chris and just say streams of government funding which could help support this as well. The key point about this is showing as local members of this council, we're doing our very best to make sure that we spend our money wisely, but also explore other avenues which could come in to support the whole project. Over to you, Councillor Guildford first.
Just one, well, 2 points. I'll come back on the criteria in a moment. As for the external funding, because this will benefit public health, as well as, you know, the large and known things. Now, I may have got this wrong, I don't know, but the county council have been trying to capitalise some of their revenue, indicating to me that they have capital monies. So, and we're all going to one unitary anyway, so is there options not only just to approach the NHS, but to approach the, don't all laugh at me, county as well for some money? From the capital.
We're not laughing.
You're not laughing, but you see the principle. But it's the clarification of that. That's what I understand. But as I say, I'm leaning towards, you know, I wouldn't want to lose this facility, but hear what's coming that an amendment will be made. As for the criteria, as I said earlier, it's not a new proposal this evening. Members discussed this back in May. There was a task group panel, and I thought the grant scheme was being amended for that, so I'm not asking for something on the amendment of one application this evening. Members will also have been copied into all the various other applications that have not got through this round of submissions. Because of the wording, they do not fit the criteria. When we looked at the scheme, yes, I agree that we changed it to allow for amounts, etc. But unless you change the criteria, you're only going to get projects through that were approved in the past. And as I say, it's not on the back of this evening, it's already debated and part of the task of panel. But I don't know if Councillor Hallbrook wanted to add anything.
Well, I was going to ask Councillor Hallbrook to speak next, actually. Okay,
Yeah.
you were in charge of this, weren't you?
Yeah, just on the criteria point of view, that probably was maybe an error of my leadership in that we broadened the scope of what could be considered a project to put in. But what I didn't consider is the actual criteria almost disqualifies them before they even hit the deck, because the criteria never changed really. And so where we were thinking about far broader, about very bespoke highways projects, actually some of those highways projects, although they passed due diligence and they've been through a very lengthy process with highways, which you'd have thought would score them quite highly, actually weren't scoring anything and they were being bounced back. So I think maybe in hindsight what I've learned is that if we are going to broaden the scope on a policy, we've also got to change the criteria to allow those projects to have at least a good chance of getting the points it needs. So I would second that if we could, and see what the council think with regard to doing that on the quick term, because there are some projects being turned down that quite evidently need to be done. They're going to end up with a lapse of the unitary anyway. Some of them are for 15 grand. We can get them done and dusted, but unfortunately they don't hit the criteria score, because by the very nature of them they never work because the criteria wasn't changed. with the relevant point about the monies, again, can I go back to this? I think the bottom line is that is where I am now having this debate is I would like to know roughly how much would we need to borrow, and with regard to the overall sum, as long as we don't kick the can down the road and delay this to an extent where it can't be delivered, I think that it's highly sensible to explore other avenues of funding to try to even when we passed it at council, if that is the will of the council, that we continually look at other forms of funding to try and help subsidise the monies of Daventry district. But I would be interested in a worst case scenario, how much money we talk about borrowing here, because it says it's likely to put the council in borrowing. What is that likely figure? Do you have any idea of what we're talking about here?
Okay, I'll come back to the second. Simon first.
Yes, Chairman, my point is not about whether you wish to amend the criteria or not per se. It's about you haven't got a paper before you which sets out pros and cons. We have good governance, we have papers that set out the principles of whatever it is we're looking at, options you've got before you. This item is about reach for help. That's all it's about. I think the public at large, community groups at large would expect you to have a paper before you if you were looking at the community grants criteria. Include take on board some of the points that have been researched by Councillor Walker.
Take a motion to council.
I would suggest, normally we have reports, Chairman. That is the way to do things. That's where you get the assessment, you get professional opinion, then you take a view considering the information.
The point is, Simon, there's a will here to put a motion to council that will then give you the opportunity to look at the paper and come back to the next item.
Depends what the motion says. If the motion invites a definite decision, there will not be a paper for the motion, it's just a motion.
Just a motion, okay.
Can I just ask, sometimes we have had in the past, I've been here, papers that have missed out strategy and gone straight to council. Could we look at aiming to take papers to council?
Yes, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's not good governance. The reason for a committee system is you're considering committee before taking.
Done it in the past.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me that there's a lot of moving parts on this one, and we've already seen some of the numbers. I think, perhaps some people, either in the public or in the chamber, operate on some fantasy illusion about the money. So I think we've already established the money element of it to a point. We've already established the wonderful benefits that the organisation brings to the community. Nobody disputes that whatsoever. And then we've got the whole issue of how to treat perhaps an amendment. Is it actually possible to bring this back to a strategy meeting in the new year with a raft of extra detail about the implications for the options? Particularly, for instance, if we were to say, let's go for an option where we fully funded it, could we explore more about the options of the borrowing, etc.? Because also there's a principle around that. Do we want to go into borrowing, and what are the implications of that? And of course, we know that actually already we've got the shortfall of 1.195.
Projected.
It's a projected figure. It's all projected, of course, but we have to operate on some basis of forecasting. And of course, we know this adds 1.48 million to it. I think perhaps it may well be the case that members are happy to go into that, obviously subject to a good business case. But the final question I put is, if we didn't have to borrow to do this, would it change the way we view it or not? Or does it still stack up? But actually, having to borrow the money to do it should make us think more deeply about it and about the risks, and have really good due diligence around it. And maybe that suggests we should come back and look at it again in the new year.
Okay, I'll let the portfolio holder come back to that point in a minute. Are there any other speakers, Councillor Walker?
Yes, I've just been distracted. With regard to this criteria, there is a matter of urgency for it, to be honest, because we have projects now being resubmitted with a slight wording to try to get points on the criteria that may well come back as being knocked back again. And so we are in extraordinary times. I agree with the moderate. We are in extraordinary times, and we're just trying to find a way to get some of the projects through that need funding, and we have a criteria that seems to be biased towards certain types, and it doesn't really allow the will of the councillors. What we wanted was to have a broader amount of schemes coming through that have a chance to get through. So I think we're in extraordinary times. I don't know whether it may not be good governance, but it may be, in this case, the right thing to do to ensure that the projects out there that the people are putting in have a fair chance of getting points on the criteria.
Okay, Councillor, you've been very honest tonight about the fact maybe when you did this originally it wasn't quite right from your point of view, so thank you for that honesty. I don't think it's fair the officers to be bouncing into this evening. I was going to suggest, if it's possible, maybe for the Chief Executive, the paper could come to the council meeting in a few weeks' time, just to highlight to members the issues, if there are any issues, and what issues around this grants process there is, to sort of take forward what Councillor Organ and Councillor Guildford was saying. Is that possible, Chief Executive?
Well, you've always got the opportunity to go straight to council with a report, as Councillor Guildford has.
Which we have to.
We have to. I support what the Monitoring Officer says in terms of it not being good governance, but
no, the debate tonight.
We know we've got a limited timetable. Can I just go back to the point I think that Councillor Organ was making? Is the time to go back to this all over again? Well, you heard me say earlier about the cinema project. We are on a collision course with a shadow authority making decisions for this authority now. This is before the 1st of April 2020, when the new unitaries are maybe in place. From around the 31st of March this year, maybe later because of the way the government has not consulted yet, and therefore is actually delaying making the final decision. But let's do what we know. What we know is the government is aiming to get this decision out by mid-February. Within 14 days of that decision being made, I'll wind back. So the government will make a decision. This is the Secretary of State. That decision then has to be passed to both Houses of Parliament, and both Houses of Parliament have to agree the structural change order that will effectively extinguish the 8 authorities and create 2 unions. Now, at this moment in time, that could be before Easter, it could be after Easter, it could be June. But I would want members not to go away from this evening thinking that it's already slipped, therefore it's okay. I am still working to the 31st of March, which is the original timetable. No one has told me officially there's any difference to that. So can we go back to run the whole cycle again? My advice to you, if you do that, you will kill this project simply because we won't have a decision in time to implement it.
Thank you. I don't want to go about the grants anymore.
I'm back ready to help.
Oh, reach for help. Okay, back to you, Councillor Guildford.
Only the line and the proposed scoring enough to meet the council's grant giving scheme. So unless it's amended, this amended not.
And the proposal scoring enough to get the council's grant is.
So reach for helping the line.
According to the papers, Chair, it has to go through the criteria, which hasn't been...
The reach for help, which hasn't been...
Okay. Yes, Councillor Hills.
Yeah, Councillor Ritchie isn't here, but I was going to say, sorry if I bore him. He certainly never bores me. He's always got something fresh to say. The trouble is we don't often agree, and that's where we agree to differ, I think. But one of the reasons why I said I would make my recommendation at the finish was I wanted to not put something in front of you until I'd heard all the recommendations and what happened. And there is no doubt there is a lot of support here for option 3. I certainly want to put forward to the full council meeting that we put forward option 3, and I'll be asking people to support that, and with a proviso that we also look at outside funding. I think that, to me, makes sense.
That's option 2 as well, then?
No. Okay. We also look at outside funding in regard to option 3. So, in other words, we provide the bulk, but if there is outside funding that can be got, then that reduces our cost. Okay? And what I would say about this is that you talked about health and well-being. Our own Health and Wellbeing Board unanimously supported Reach for Health when they gave their presentation. And this is part of our MSP. So the support that's here is support based on what we know, what we've seen and what we act upon. And when we look at the site itself, you've got the bowls club, you've got the table tennis club, you've got the squash club, you've got the rugby club, and you've got the athletics track. This is an ideal site. It's right where a lot of sport goes on. It's a central area where people in Daventry know it and that they can visit it. So to me, quite frankly, this ticks all the boxes. And I'm asking everybody here on the strategy group to support going forward in option 3 with that provided.
Okay, Councillor, all I say on that is, I think everyone sort of discounted option 1. I think that's right.
Well, discounted option 1.
Why haven't anyone supports option 1? No? Okay. I think option 2 should be on the table, because otherwise we're not giving the NHS a message they don't have to do anything. All I'm saying is I think we should try and approach the NHS or other areas of trying to get funding in. So I think it's wrong to discount that at this stage. When we get to the council, it might be different. But I think between now and the council, we've got some work to be done to try and see what avenues there are to get external funding in as part of our due diligence, and also as a council, you know, for value for money for our taxpayers.
If I may, Chair, one thing I certainly don't want to do is to delay this.
We're not delaying it. We're not delaying it. It's December. Yeah. So, it's the same time then.
Right, I'll put this forward to members.
Councillor Howard.
Yeah, Chair, can we just put option 3 on the table, please, and look for outside funding rather than going for option 2? I don't want to delay it any further.
We're not delaying it. We're not delaying it. It's the council.
Sorry, Chair. I think we should just go for option 3 and put the amendment in the paper to say that it needs to have outside funding. If not, then it's free.
Yeah, I don't want to be a broken record, Chair, but we still have, if you put option 2 through as well, it does say that the proposed score, it has to score, we're back to that problem. So unless we will just scrap out that line and we accept now the will of the council is that we're going to go ahead with this project, that it meets the vision and funding, then I don't think you can put 2 on the table because it will just get bounced back because it won't.
I get that point, now the last line, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
So that's why I'm
saying take that line out there, that's going to be in there.
Yeah, if it wasn't there, it makes perfect sense what you're saying, but...
Okay, modify for it, yes.
I mean, option 1 includes helping reach the health funds external funding sources. So what you're really talking about is a blend of all of these.
Yes. So you can put this option 3, is that what you're saying, son?
Chairman, the words I would have had would be that the council fully funds the new building for Reach for Health in accordance with option 3 as set out in the report, plus seeks external funding to assist with the project costs.
Let's happy that amended. Show of hands, please. Anyone against?
Yes.
Steve Oswald against. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That's carried then. Members of the public, we have a 5-minute comment. It's 9:15. I'll ask the question of you all whether you want to continue. So we move on to item 4, environment issues, electric plug-in vehicle infrastructure plan. Councillor Guildford.
Right, well, excuse me because I have a mint in my mouth.
Well, shall we move on to the next one then?
Well, this will be very quick. It's a refresh. Let's be as quick as can. It's a refresh of something that we've already agreed. We've looked at what we need to be doing for the future. Yeah. It's a very short report that I'm sure you've all read. So are you happy for it to go forward?
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Colin Moore.
Can I second the chair? Is that the... do you second that?
No, I don't second it. I have to support it.
Yeah.
Great. That's great. Thank you, Councillor Guildford. The rest of you like that, we want you. Right, the next one is housing and environmental health issues, Gambling Act 2005, Councillor Organ.
Thank you. Again, people hopefully have read the papers, but very briefly, every 3 years the Gambling Act requires licensing authorities to review and publish a statement of principles and that they intend to apply when exercising their related functions. 2005 Act has 3 objectives: preventing gambling from being the source of crime or disorder, being associated with crime or disorder, or being used to support crime. Number 2, ensure that gambling is conducted in a fair and open manner, and protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. Following agreement from the Licensing Committee on the 18th of September of this year, a wide-scale consultation exercise took place for a 6-week period starting at the week beginning the 24th of September. And we had 2 responses, which you'll find on Appendix 3. So this widespread, I think it may have even gone internationally, you never know, but we got 2 responses. It shows a great interest in that. You can read them for yourselves. That's with regard to some of the detailed proposed changes within the policy. They're on Appendix 2, and they're just really sort of minor, non-consequential changes to the narrative. Just one point I do want to point out is that the 2005 Act also requires licensing authorities to determine a resolution regarding the provision of casinos. Yeah. The Council passed a no casino resolution on the 7th of December 2006, then on the 26th of November 2009, and then 2012 and then 2015 respectively, the latter of which is incorporated in the existing policy. However, the resolution legally lapsed after 3 years. So on the 18th of September 2018, the Licensing Committee recommended that the Council adopts a no casino resolution. So before you, our recommendation for Council that the Council adopts the Gambling Act 2005 policy statement, and that the Council adopts a no casinos resolution under Section 166 of the Gaming Act.
Sorry, Steve.
Frightens me, Chairman.
Right, so back to Steve Council. We've got 2 recommendations out. On the comments, we do agree with the recommendations.
Agreed.
Councillor Morgan, sorry.
I think, Chair, actually, I was only going to say, I think the likelihood of a casino operating in our district area is pretty remote anyway.
You have seen the background, haven't you?
Sorry, absolutely.
You have a background.
Yes, I do, but I don't have to declare an interest in all that, because I've reformed my ways.
That's right.
And I have worked with casinos.
Sorry, Chair, to be quite honest with you, I think that's a bit presumptuous really, because Maria Taylor and myself did talk about a Las Vegas style strip. Possibly.
Is that casino? Yeah, casino. I guess this is true beyond the. And I was actually ordinance on the record.
That didn't come out right, but I will yield.
I'm glad the audience have got this. Okay, back to you, Councillor.
Chair, thank you. I mean, no pardon, but I didn't recall giving way to what he does with Maria is his own business. But I was also going to make the point about actually one of the greatest concerns at the moment is FOBTs anyway. And of course, the government has various positions on that. And of course, they are one of the biggest challenges to gambling.
Can I just say how happy I am that they actually reversed that position? Yeah. They're going to do it straight away. I was really angry about the fact they're going to extend it. Totally wrong. The bad impact they have on the communities. What I mean. Back to you, Councillor.
That's what I was going to say, Chair. And actually, that is somebody who used to work for a gambling group. One of my fears, actually, because I was the head of social responsibility, if you remember, and I was deeply concerned about the business increasing the number of FOBTs in the betting shops, and that was one of their biggest sources of income. It's all the greatest come the same.
It's addictive.
Highly addictive and well proven to be addictive because of the nature of the games.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. And you lose money, Steve.
I hope it's not addictive.
Councillor James.
Yes, Chairman. This is probably a funny question, but if we adopt a no casinos resolution, and when we become a unit,
Well, something can you bother to think about?
That would be for the new body.
Yeah.
And if so, is it possible to adopt a no casinos resolution in Parliament or something?
Well, that's for them to decide.
That's for them.
I doubt it. I guess it'd be in the area. I don't know.
You could, yeah.
You could do, okay. So that's for them, not for us. Not for them. Yeah. Okay, so we've got 2 recommendations. Do you support them?
Yes.
Okay. Now 9:15, so we come to that point now. I ask you, do you want to continue the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah, get through.
Thank you. I know Steve wants to eat tonight. Tell me that.
Well, I've got Domino is coming shortly.
Okay.
Fish and chips yesterday.
That's right.
Moving on to community, culture and leisure issues, proposed improvements to athletics facilities at Daventry Sports Park. Councillor Hills.
Yes, thank you. Well, athletics facilities at Daventry Sports Park, you've got the recommendations in front of you that subject to a suitable agreement up to £450,000 be granted to the Sports Trust as per option 3 in the report. Funding should be taken from the Strategic Infrastructure Fund and then repaid from seal funds. The trust is a registered charity. It's asked for help in carrying out improvements to the athletic facilities, such as the completion of the running track, and they're also looking to replace the existing porta cabin, which currently serves as a clubhouse, and provide better access for the disabled. This has been on my radar in the past, having been successful in obtaining help in my portfolio role, and also when I was a county councillor. This is something I fully support, and I request members' support as well. The benefits are there to see, not only to the club itself, but to the community, and will achieve our aims in leaving a legacy to our sporting community and the community in general before unitary takes place. I ask strategy group members to endorse it.
Members do, Councillor Hills. Councillor Osborne.
Just a quick question. The seal money, is that the seal money that's kept on the houses on the whole of the district, which is the district council's part of it, or is it just Daventry's part of it?
The district.
It's the district, there is only one.
It's the district.
This one.
Of the whole lot.
You happy with that? Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? You happy to agree with the recommendations? Agree. Thank you. Now move on to another one of yours, Councillor Hills. Last one tonight. Sports facilities investment strategy consultation.
Yeah, this is very brief. This sports strategy, this is actually a consultation. It is a request that this take place. We, the council, are charged with providing sports facilities, encouraging physical activity and promoting a healthy lifestyle. Going forward, we need to set out our priorities. We have unitary blooming in 2020, but we need to set our stall out now for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Do you agree with the resolved items? The resolved items, do you agree with that? Thank you. So the consultation can now move forward. Thank you, indeed. Move on to strategic planning issues. Daventry Parish Neighbourhood Development Plan, Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope that this won't take members long to consider. It is something with which we are familiar. We have 3 neighbourhood development plans coming before you tonight. I would just point out a couple of highlights in each case, Chairman. On page 126, it talks about if an NDP proceeds to examination, and it should say referendum, because we've had the examination. We're now approaching a referendum, and I would say that agreement was sought from Daventry Parish Council to the extension of time to allow the decision to be made at Council on the 6th of December, and that is, I think, what is going to happen. In paragraph 4.3 on page 127, it says that the examiner notes effective community consultation has been carried out. It's a shame Councillor Rich has disappeared because he's often querying whether or not
I'm sure the
effective community consultation. Perhaps you can pass that on. And what's really pleasing about this case, Chairman, is that the examiner has recommended no major modifications to the plan. However, there's a slight issue which I hope won't stop us tonight, which is that on page 128 it points out that the confines recommended by the examiner are different from the ones proposed in the Settlement Countryside Part 2 local plan, but I'm hoping that that isn't going to cause a delay to the processing of the Settlements and Countryside Part 2 local plans, because as you know we must meet the 24th of January deadline, and I'm sure that we'll find a way of altering the text accordingly.
Chairman, thank you. All we'll do is, assuming the NDP has approved the referendum, we will simply put a minor change proposal to the examiner for the SSC local plan.
And it won't have to go
to
It won't have to go out for further consultation. Thank you very much. The other error in the text paragraph 4.4, the third line, it talks about the examiner. There are no reasons to differ from his recommendation. It was a lady, Chairman, should say her recommendation. Otherwise, I would recommend two members tonight, Chairman.
The 5 recommendations.
The 5 recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Thanks for pointing out those small areas. Councillor Guilford.
I'd just like to ask a quick question, because obviously Derby is within my ward, and I know the parish council wanted one set of confines and the district council wanted another set of confines, but from the way I've read this, the examiner has gone with the confines that Badby was proposing.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, that means I can vote for it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So are you in favour of the recommendations?
Agreed.
Anyone against? Thank you, it's carried. Next statement, Councillor Chandler, skills for Neighbourhood Development Plan.
Yes. Forgive me while I turn up the page. And can I, as I do so, just point out that the date for the referendum was recommended to be the 24th of January, which is rather
Page 143.
Yes, we're on page 143. This is Guildford Neighbourhood Development Plan. Exactly the same status. Again, it mentions examination and it should say referendum on page 144.
24th of January again.
It's the 24th of January. The examiner made some recommendations which will be, I'm asking that you accept those and that we follow the recommendation and go for a referendum on the 24th of January.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. 5 recommendations. Any questions?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Yeah.
All agreed, thank you. Next one is Walton Neighbourhood Development Plan, Councillor Chandler.
Yes, 181.
Very well, sir.
Similar comments to everything. Again, it says examination and it should say referendum. At least they're consistent. And there is the usual spiel. And the only thing I would point out here, Chairman, is that the area recommended by the examiner for the referendum is not the same as the parish boundary, because they want to leave out effectively the Nickelwell Park extension. But since there's nobody living there, it's not going to make any difference to the referendum anyway. So that should be okay. And again, I would recommend that we accept the recommendation that the plan, as agreed to be modified, is sent for referendum on the 24th of January.
Busy day. Thank you, Mr. Deed. Councillor Chandler, 5 recommendations. Agreed, are you happy?
Agreed.
Gone against? No? Thank you. There's record time here, Councillor Chandler, but we've got 3 more to go, so I'm cautious. Rules and Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan Conservation Area Designation.
Yes, again, to help members, page 205 in your papers. Again, this is something with which we're very familiar. This Bronston is already a conservation area, so it's less traumatic in some ways than designating a new one. The proposals for differences are almost entirely small rationalisations where the current boundary bisects existing plots. These amendments are intended to provide a more robust designation and to provide consistent boundary which doesn't create management issues through the unnecessary bisection of plots. One rated that the consultation was successful. You've got a copy of the responses. One resident requested a small reduction in the boundary relating to rationalisation of a plot, and it was agreed that that would be sensible. Otherwise, there were no changes sought to any of it. That the proposed area designated for the conservation area appraisal management plan, that the conservation area appraisal and management plan therefore be adopted as a supplementary planning document, that the proposed boundary be designated, that the local list be agreed, and that, as usual with conservation areas, we undertake further work before coming forward with a proposal to strategy and concerning Article 4 directions, Chairman.
Chairman, if I may, I have spotted a type tracker there at this time. Recommendation 5 should read that the local list entries for bronze concessions.
Yes, of course.
Be agreed.
You missed that one, Councillor Chanter.
No, I thought that people would know what that meant, as I'm sure the author did.
Thank you. So we've got 6 recommendations to the group. Are you happy to support them?
Agreed.
Thank you. Kilsby Conservation Area Designation, Councillor Chanter.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I won't go through it because it will be the same 6 recommendations. And again, it doesn't say local list entry. Oh, it does. Oh, good. The 9 responses were received for the consultation here. 5 written responses were received. 9 on the online survey. But only 4 people actually made any real comments. The others just said, please let me know what happens. The responses have been largely positive. 2 respondents expressed concern over the potential for conservation area planning controls to be onerous for households. People often don't fully understand exactly what it means. But comments were made regarding some properties that they shouldn't be included, and they are not included in the proposed list of the local list. So, and again, Chairman, we're proposing the adoption of the conservation area boundary and the conservation area appraisal and management plan as a supplementary document, and that the local list as amended be agreed, and that further work be undertaken on Article 4 directives.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Any questions, comments? Councillor Lomax has got home. So we've got 6 recommendations. Are you happy to support them?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I just say, we've gone through 5 items there quite quickly. There's a tremendous amount of officer work goes into those items.
Indeed, sir.
So I think members should be aware of that. There's been a lot of work gone into those 5 items. And there's a testament to that good work that's gone through very quickly, actually. And I know that you, Councillor Chanter, are very particular when you look at all your papers.
Yes.
I've got a lot of confidence that the job's been done properly, so well done.
Indeed, and you've obviously been reading my script. You've stolen my line.
I didn't mean to say that.
But I would just endorse your congratulations to the officers.
We've got one last paper under your portfolio, which is the South Northamptonshire local plan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members may remember that we saw the consultation on the South Northamptonshire local plan. That's their Part 2 plan, really. And we made a comment because they said that the duty of cooperation might have been an issue, and they wanted to complain about our plan, and then they withdrew that. So we're not complaining about their plan. The comment that the officers have made on the bottom of page 236, there's nothing in the plan which would give rise to any concern for Daventry district, which is nice to see.
Well, we'll do one big happy family in a couple of years.
We will indeed. Well, yes. Well, you know as well as I do, Chairman, that people still get glared at across the room.
Not necessarily supplement.
No.
Okay, thank you.
There was this issue about the NRDA, the Northampton Regional Development Area, and because we objected to it because we felt it would lead to regional development, and they haven't included it. So our comments to them were usefully listened to, and we have issued, as requested by government, a statement of common ground with South Northamptonshire Council, which is good because we can go arm in arm, as it were, and control the borough as necessary. So I think that's good, and I would ask that members note, this is a resolved item, that we note progress being made, that we confirm that we're satisfied that the duty to cooperate has been complied with by South Northampton, and that we confirm that we don't raise any issues about the plan meeting the tests of soundness. they will welcome that support, Chairman, I'm sure.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Chancellor. Any questions, comments? Are members happy to support the three resolved items?
Great.
Anyone against? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chancellor.
Thank you, Chairman.
We now move on to resources issues. This is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review 2018-19. Councillor Morgan.
Chair, thank you. I rather hoped you'd asked us to take this one earlier, actually, as we do a paper.
I didn't.
No, but I was going to request it. I didn't quite get the request. And there is a very serious reason why. Because when I was outside earlier, one of the individuals from that group actually said to me something along the lines of, "You can afford this. You've got 66 million in the bank." And not least, obviously we've had that discussion now, but not entirely happy with the outcome. And the reason why is because there is a perception that we have 66 million in the bank. And whilst we may have 66 million in the bank, it's not all about cash. And the whole point of this paper, of course, is we have to set out the details around treasury management according to guidelines. But there's a couple of things I'd like to point out very much so here to members before I ask you to approve the two recommendations. And that is a very nice feature around the interest. And that is when we make the forecast for how much we're going to earn in interest, we've actually been able to make so far £140,000 more interest in the year than we budgeted for, so that is helpful money for us. And again, part of it is because, as you can see in the table, the money is widely invested and spread whilst it's being looked after on our behalf. And the second point I'd really like to make, because I know we're in a bit of a hurry towards ink and I now, is that money is covering a range of different sources, not sources, but things we need to keep it for. It's not our money. I think most people know that by now, but there's always a bit that we have 66 million in the bank to spend how we like. So with that little caveat there, Chair, and people can see the paper's pretty straightforward, as always, very familiar with these. So half money, that's all I'd like to say.
I'm sure when we get the full council round, the opportunity again to...
Yeah, I think when we're a bit fresher, Chair, might be an opportunity to restate that, so people don't get carried away. I think we have the funds to farm on it. Thank you.
I'm just curious why Kettering Borough Council are offering such attractive interest rates.
Well, Chair, after tonight's meeting, we may have to go to Kettering Borough Council and see if they can loan us some money and pay that at suitable for our extra largesse for this evening.
Okay, thank you. We've got two recommendations. Group, are there any questions or comments? If not, are you happy to put those recommendations through to Council? Thank you very much indeed. We've already dealt with other paper, Councillor Morgan. There's no urgent business, so the meeting is now concluded.